Hello, hello, hello. Sorry for the slight delay in the start there. Got some fireworks going on, and dog is not happy with it. So Nacho was just like cowering underneath my desk. But he's in the bedroom now, so he's fine. Let's switch things on up. Ugh. Yeah, he's fine now, so he's doing okay. As you can see, disassembling stuff in the room now. It's getting closer. Oh no. The move, it's happening. I mean, we still got time. We got like a lot of time. I'm just trying to get ahead of the curve, really. But yeah, good to see you all here. Welcome, welcome. How are you all doing? We got V, Slate, Victoria, Tom G, Justine, Leia, Babu, and Top G in the chat. I love it to see you all. Hope you're all doing well. I had like a bunch of like pages on gibbets still open, which is like a new word that I learned today. Okay. We're probably going to be talking about that a little bit later down the line. But yeah, the week has been going good for my end. As you can see, I've been disassembling a bit, cleaning up the room. Busy with team challenges because a lot of teams are in the swing of things now. So yeah, it's been nose to the grindstone a little bit. And then I'm doing my part when it comes to we're continuing the production of the courses. So I'm honestly doing a lot of video editing these days. That is what I'm doing a lot of. And then today and yesterday, I spent a lot of time in editing like a new intro and outro for our workshops because with the move and all that kind of stuff happening, stuff is changing in the background too. So I will be going back and doing the editing for all the workshops too, which is, it's cool. I actually kind of like video editing, you know? So I've been trying to set that up so that we're ready to go on that front as well. And we're gonna be adding like a lot of workshops that are still missing from the back catalog in the coming weeks. So that's gonna be really exciting. I think we have 6 of them that are like good to go. So we're getting them up and running on the website and all that stuff. So yeah, for people that are subscribed to the workshop tier, you're gonna see an influx of workshops coming to you real soon. With that move from me doing the editing now, that also increases the speed of our editing too. Well, hopefully the turnaround of our editing too, which is gonna be good. Because then we don't have to go back to like someone externally, you know. Because here's the issue that I have, right? It's not that the person that we worked with was like slow or anything like that. Far from. It was just sometimes you have ideas that you can't really put into words unless you see them like materialize in front of you. And I'm one of those people that if I'm doing like, let's say I'm doing editing, I come up with ideas on the fly and then I try to do some like things that I think could be good in the moment, you know, and then I just like iterate from that point on. So I kind of find it really hard to then tell someone else to do that and don't really have like an end vision for it. So yeah. So hopefully we're gonna see some stuff in the future from that. Hey Lily, how are you doing? For people that are new to the chat, kind of popping in and out, feel free to ask any questions. This is an open chat about game development, being an environment artist in the games industry, working on your portfolio, personal work, all that kind of stuff, or even if you just want to get into games, like let me know if you have any questions and then we can talk about it. And then once we kind of do like the opening ramble that we're doing right now, then we're going to jump into the community's work and then we're actually going to be having a look at how they are doing. See if we can give some feedback as well. In the meantime, I'm still like gathering some of the images here so that we can get a good head start. I think for once, I actually had some more time this week. So I did manage to gather a whole bunch of images and feedback already for most people, which is what I'm pretty excited about. So yeah. But it's saying, yeah, I've been doing great. How are you doing? Yeah, I'm doing good as well. Doing good. It's been busy. We've kind of sorted out like a new place. So we kind of have like a new place when we're doing like the move back to Belgium. So that place is all in order. We're trying to get like the normal stuff like in order, you know, like all the bills set up, all that kind of jazz. So that's been going on in the background. Doing a lot of coursework. So yeah. Honestly, I'm doing a lot of that stuff. Hello, Jose. Good to see you. But yeah, that's about it on my side. Honestly, I don't really have too much more to report. It is honestly just every day, just like waking up, getting started, doing a bunch of editing, talking to a bunch of people, seeing if we can get traction on stuff. And that is honestly it until I just go to sleep, basically. But yeah, Anika Toons, hello, good to see you. How are you doing? Slade is asking a question. Do you see yourself teaching in universities or colleges in your homeland? That's a good question. So I thought about it, and I'm not gonna say no. But I don't know if I want to be teaching. I want to be doing other stuff, which is really weird. Like, for example, I like doing this kind of stuff, right? And seeing if I can like double down on what this is. I've been thinking about some ideas on like making Whip Wednesday more into like a show rather than just me doing some stuff. So I would honestly rather take it into that way and actually make it like a show or something like that, right? I mean, a show sounds so fancy. And then kind of like weave the teaching into that rather than going into like a very traditional kind of teaching position. Although I'm not going to say no. Like if the need arises, or I don't know. Yeah. But it's not necessarily something that I'm like really interested in. What I would love to do, and I've done that before. So I went to my school where I'm from, like my uni where I'm from, and I would then just do like an entire day of portfolio reviews. I've done that like a couple of times, which is like way more interesting. Like I really enjoy that stuff. Would I maybe doing a small presentation or something like that, but like full-time teaching? Not really. Because here's the thing, like I'm still an artist at heart, right? And I guess an artist and like I guess you could call it like a tech enthusiast. I love playing around with tech, like trying to like experiment with new things, right? So yeah, in that case, like I don't really see myself doing it necessarily full time, or even gonna sound so weird, but like even part time. I feel like I love the flexibility of saying like Lily says, right? Like I'll do a demo or I'll do a presentation or something like that. But it's kind of a weird one, right? Because I'm in this position where whenever, let's say, I have an idea of a presentation, why would I then do it for a university when I can do it for all of you guys, right? That's sort of the weird thing. I have like a bunch of really interesting ideas that I kind of want to do, and I'm gonna be doing more of them in the future. Sort of like remember when I did like the Unwrapped session where I talked about like how to start your project. That is the sort of stuff that I want to do more of, and that would be like good to like grow the channel as well. Whereas like yeah, for now, that other stuff feels kind of like I'm just distracting myself, you know? I don't know. That's the way that it feels. I know a lot of people who teach now and then. Yeah, I do too. Like some of the friends that I have back in Belgium, they are also one of them actually, from the sounds of it, found their passion in teaching. So they went from like working in a game development studio to then full-time teaching. And he seems to be loving it. Slate is saying do some advertising for BE in universities. Well, so here's the thing, right? Like, I feel like we're already doing that, but I'm not doing it. Like, I feel that like the stuff that I hear, even though it is more slow going, right? But and sometimes very invisible and hard to track. But I know that people are talking about the resources that we put out, right? So that stuff is already going on. Even though you're right, like if I were to do like a talk for like a uni, I could then turn that into like a promotional thing, right? And get a bunch of people interested. But then again, I'm like, do I go for that where I can reach an audience of maybe 30? Because most unis, well, this would actually be a question for all of you guys. Like, do you know any examples of a uni with like a thriving online presence? Because obviously most of the unis that I'm thinking of, well, to be fair, there are some new ones that are kind of breaking the mold, right? I think Think Tank is kind of doing that or getting more and more into it, which is really good. Sierra Division is also like an example of that, where they're like more new tech rather than traditional, I guess. But if I think about like traditional universities, that is what I think about, right? Is that they're just focused on like their in the building stuff rather than their external stuff for the most part, right? So Charlie saying my uni had a uni-wide Discord. Yeah. And I think that's what most unis do, but that is not something that is related to like marketing, right? I'm more talking about like, let's say, what is the benefit of me coming to do a presentation for uni rather than doing it for like our channel, let's say, right? That's usually what when I think about stuff. It's not a bad idea. It's just, yeah, I don't know. Live talks and live work reviews help a lot. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do in just a minute here as well. I do think they do. Now that I have more time, I am honestly excited to tweak this formula and, like I said, make it more into a show. Because what I did enjoy, but it is really time consuming, and I don't know how to balance this just yet. But I really love to talk to people live on stream. You remember when we did that like a couple of months ago, when I would just sit in like a Discord and we have like one person join, and then we would talk about their work? Something like that seems really interesting. It's just I need to find a balance between, like, first of all, how many people we have versus how many people can apply, to then like the whole formula, right? So yeah, there is some stuff to think about there, but I do want to keep evolving this. And then maybe, who knows, maybe I put out some stuff here on YouTube and then we get into like the university curriculum somehow, right? Or like in the university sphere, I'll say. So who knows? Who knows? But that is, yeah, I'm not shutting it out. Charlie is saying I have to upload next week. I got home from work late and missed the window. No! Just a reminder for everyone who missed the window, like, you can upload your stuff like a day early if you wanted to, and then tag it up. Like, that's totally fine, right? It's really flexible with that. Let's see. There's another question from... I am so sorry. I'm not going to be able to read that. I think that's Cyrillic, right? If I'm not mistaken. So, hi, to be a 3D environment artist, is it more about 3D asset creation or building a location in Unreal Engine? What's the difference between an environment artist and a level designer? I mean, responsibility. Okay, so two questions in that one, right? The first one is, a 3D environment artist, is it more about building or building with pre-existing assets, or is it more about the creation of assets, right? And it's a weird one because both of them can be true. Like, it kind of depends on the setup of the company. So for example, when I was at Ubisoft, I used to do pretty much both at the same time. Well, let me think. Yeah, let's say I would do like an even split, somewhat at another company. But let's say for another company, it could be that you spend like most of your time just like doing set dressing and like level art and location creation compared to 3D asset creation. It kind of depends on what the game is that you're working on and also how the studio is set up, right? So that's why, I mean, to make it really simple, is as a 3D environment artist, if you don't have knowledge on how to build 3D assets, you're not going to get a job. To make it really simple. Second question. So what is the difference between an environment artist and a level designer? So if we take a step back, a level designer focuses on the functionality of a space, whereas the environment artist focuses on the visuals of a space. That is the big difference. So where a level designer doesn't really care about like how something looks, they focus on like how something plays. And then we care a little bit less about like how something plays and we care about how something looks. So that's the big difference there. Anika Toons, where can I find the Discord link? Do I have to be a member in order to submit my work for review? Yes, all the work that's reviewed today is work from our community. So you will have to be a member of that community. And you can find a Discord link. Well, it is a paid Discord, I will say, but you can find the link in the description. It will lead you straight to our website as well. But yeah, that is a good question. Yeah, that's a commonly asked question about the difference between level design and environment art, right? One is function, one is visuals. But yeah, and then even with that one, you can kind of have like a blend between. You can kind of blend between. Like some studios, for example, they have the two more integrated, where you as an environment artist will also be doing some level design or vice versa. It gets kind of muddy. That's why if you want to get an accurate picture of what the company is looking for, you have to look through the application and see what your responsibilities are like. Cheap for the benefits you get. Hey, thanks, Slate. Thank you. But yeah, going back to like now, having more time to work on Beyond Extend. God, I'm so excited to be able to put more work into it, like more time and more work. I've already been doing like a lot of invisible stuff on the website, which I'm really excited about. Trying to do some like cleanup in the back end as well, but I'm really excited to make like more resources in the future. It's gonna be really cool. Thank you a lot for the answer. I was confused before, now I got it. Yeah, no worries. Victoria is asking a good follow-up question. So will a level artist be doing the same thing as an environment artist? And are there any differences? So that is a good question. I'm trying to think. If we go with like the most generic advice, right? Or like the most generic bucket, an environment artist will be doing modeling and actual creation and like architectural kits and all that kind of stuff, right? Whereas a level artist, usually you are gonna be more delegated to just like set dress into the scene. So you're not really gonna create like anything new. You're just gonna tell stories with pre-existing assets, build up locations, build up points of interest, make sure that the connection between them is good, do some terrain sculpting, like some of that. Like you're more focusing on using pre-existing stuff or pre-existing systems to then set dress the world with. So yeah, probably the same thing for your question, David. Yeah, it is hard to put them into buckets. That's why I give the recommendation to look at the responsibilities and the applications of open positions, because in there you can usually kind of suss out what you're going to be doing. Slate is asking, for an environment artist, can it then also apply for a level artist position, or are there more complexities? Yeah. So an environment artist, again, it is it's heavily dependent on your portfolio, right? But in general, if you have a good environment artist portfolio, which is kind of more like a generalist kind of position, I guess, you can then also apply for a level artist position. Yeah. That's why also that is a good question of why I tend to focus so much on storytelling, right? Because storytelling is such a big focus of a level artist, where you have to be able to convey a well, first of all, you have to be able to convey the logic of a location in a game world in almost like a snap, right? Like I need to look at something in the distance and I need to be able to tell if it's like an oil refinery or like a lumber mill, right? Let's say. You need to be able to convey those differences and distill like locations to their like core elements to then be able to display that to the player, right? And that is one of the core things that you can then build upon with like additional layers of storytelling, right? And thinking about like, oh, how does this location work logically, and what are these people doing in this location that sets them apart storytelling wise, right? So there's like lots of layers, and technically as a level artist, you focus more on that side of things, because as an environment artist, you tend to do like, I guess, again, depends heavily on the company that you work for, but I guess you do like it's a more generalist bucket, right? So if we take a step back, you can kind of see environment artist as just being the bucket that kind of contains everything, and level artist is kind of a specialization within an environment artist. Hello, Frigga. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. And then Victoria saying, got it. Thank you. No worries. Yeah, some really good questions. There's always a lot of confusion with this stuff, right? So I can totally get it. It's almost the same thing as you are like a prop artist, but then you also have like a vehicle artist or a weapon artist, right? So they're more specialized positions, I guess. David is coming in with the hot question, huh? What do you think about AI? I mean, environment art wise. I think nothing of it. Like I've not really seen anything that like really interests me or is necessarily worrying me. I think this whole industry is kind of just getting swept up in just like panic mode, right? Well, panic mode, and then also like, oh my god, how can we get as much money out of this AI thing as possible, right? I try to keep up to date with it. Last time, like I think a month ago, we checked out, or I did check out like a 3D AI generative like model, and it honestly, it sucked ass. You know, like it's honestly not great. Does that mean that that can change in the future? Yeah, for sure. But like at that point, we're talking about like a future that might be 10 years, 20 years. I don't know. How far out should we be looking, right? It's hard to tell. And then also there's going to be, the industry is going to evolve into different directions, right? So what was interesting is that, for example, I think this was, I don't really have like the statements here with me, but I was reading through some news about EA, that they want to dive more into like AI, right? So they're probably going to be using AI for texture generation or something like that, right? They said that that was like one of the use cases, which I can see. I mean, I've even seen like pretty well known material and texture artists like working with AI, like all the way in the beginning when AI came out, right? And then because artists were so against it, they kind of stopped experimenting with that stuff like publicly. But I assume that they're using it into their workflows now, right? So yeah, I'm sure that it will honestly just be like embedded in tools, and then we're going to be using it more, and then no one's going to think about it once or twice. What is really scary to me in just like a more generic form is just the whole social thing around it. I don't want to go too far into it, but Just that there is something that can spit out like a bunch of content and that will drown out the content that is handcrafted. That is the thing that is the most worrying to me as an artist. In a very general way, right? Anika Toons is saying, when I started, there were hyper casual games and I started with them. Then I gradually started to work on AAA games, but that was about 5 years ago. What would you advise someone who is starting today? That's a good question. That is a very good question. So I try to keep my advice like pretty much up to date, right? But I feel like it's becoming so difficult to give any solid advice on this now because the market is so difficult for a junior. I feel like we've honestly gotten to the point where it's you focus on what you want to do the most, right? Like let's say, I don't know, let's say a random thing, you love doing environments just like I do. I never cared about assets, never cared about it. I don't want to spend like all my time tinkering about like a single box. I just want to do the big stuff, right? Let's say if that is the thing that you want to do, I want to see you do it well and I want to see you focus on it, right? I don't really want to see I'm not really that interested, and I think the industry is not really that interested in like you trying to appeal to the industry. And I to a certain degree, like I don't think it ever was. You know, like even in my time, like I feel like the reason why I got in because I was so unapologetically like, hey, look, I don't care about the small stuff. I want to do the big stuff. Give me a job, you know? And that was also what my portfolio tried to reflect at that point as well, right? So what I was saying was reflected with like what I was doing, right? So there was no discrepancy there. If I'm giving people advice on how to start now, it is basically that. Like in the beginning, experiment. Do a lot of experiments. Try to get comfortable with it, because in the beginning, what is going to happen is you're going to get bogged down by technical stuff. That's fine. Try to get through that and try to get to the artistic stuff again. Once you get into the artistic stuff, try styles. Try different shapes, try different colors, like try different styles, try different, you know, hyper casual games, like try doing stuff with that, or like try doing stuff for like AAA games. Find what you like, and then once you found that, stick to it. Because I think that is the thing that's going to make you stand out. Because there are people that do like very, very niche stuff, but that also means that they're going to get hired to do that niche stuff, right? So that is the best thing that I would say. And then also kind of in addition to it, and this is from my personal experience, don't only do art, pick up business as well. I'm not talking about like going to a business school or something like that. I'm talking about like, hey, if you're doing art, try to then also make something that is relevant to the end user and try to sell it, right? Because that was super valuable to me, even though I suck at business, right? I want to get that straight. Like I took a way too long time to kind of figure out like a bunch of stuff that is like relatively easy, but I want to encourage people to think about also doing the business side of it. Like if you make something, try to sell it online. Get to grips with it. Even if it doesn't do well, it's going to give you insights into something that you normally don't have insights in, and you can then tweak it, right? So you're not just only like honing one skill, which is your art, you're also honing like the business side of things. And then if you grow them up like at the same rate, you are going to have like more choices than people that just focus on one. So learn a bit of it all and make it your own identity. I think the own identity to me has always been the thing that I wanted to see, because it is when I see someone's portfolio and I can just tell that they're trying to be someone else, like I'm not really that interested. You know, I also, if I was in like a hiring position, I would rather hire someone who has a very driven, like artistic mind compared to someone who tries to fit in, you know? Because someone with an artistic mind and a creative mind is going to drive things forward, when someone who is just gonna do the thing that they say you to do, like they're just gonna feed the status quo, right? They're never gonna be driving and charging forward. That's the way that I look at it, at least. But it's a really interesting topic. I would love to do, because this is obviously just coming from my own experiences, trying to sort of say it in a way that kind of makes sense. But this sort of question would be really interesting to do like some sort of like video about or something like that. Like, what would my advice be? Maybe it could almost be like a yearly thing where me looking at the market could almost be like a yearly thing that changes, right? Like maybe I see stuff that could be interesting. Alexi. Oh, so you changed your name. Thank you, Alexi. Sorry, I couldn't read it. Do you spend extra time for learning new stuff, or do you do it during work? It's a bit of both. I spend, well, I don't do it as much now, but I spend a lot of time learning new stuff. Basically, my entire portfolio, all the personal work is just stuff that I did outside, right? I did challenges. I basically did like, I might, at a certain point, I think I was doing almost as much time outside of work as I was doing inside of work. Which is crazy. But I just love it. I just love it. Going back to the other thing, it's more like you take what you want and what you love and go from there instead of replicating Art 101. Yeah, exactly. Because let's say one of the potential issues that we see with the industry now is that we're seeing remakes and we're going bigger and broader, but like the things that we do as artists within it are getting more niche and just more repetitive to a certain degree. Whereas if you can then showcase that, like, hey, you kind of wanna do something different, maybe that doesn't really work for the industry that we're in now. But in 5 years, let's say, I think we might be in a different industry, or like the industry has shifted where all these things, all the companies that are now being started up are going to be maturing. And yeah, there's going to be new opportunities, right? Because I kind of feel that if we just look at like the thing that worked for other people, for example, the stuff that I did to a certain degree doesn't really work anymore, right? Like I had a mediocre portfolio and all that kind of stuff. Like it needs to be different. So I'm trying to look ahead rather than to look back, which is difficult. Learning all the time, you have to. I'll tell you another thing. The games industry is constantly changing. The stuff that we did 10 years ago, like all the programs that I use, they're no longer around. Well, except for Max, I guess, or Maya. They're still around. But like, yeah, all the other stuff? Like, Unreal Engine from back then, I started with like UDK, which was like Unreal Engine 3. That is like, some of the core systems are there, but that's like unrecognizable compared to what it is now. Well, we didn't have Substance. We used Quixel. We used Quixel Dedo and Endu, which was like this forgotten plugin that was attached to Photoshop that like Quixel kind of wants you to forget about. Hello, we need a tutorial full of learning stuff. I mean, that's pretty generalistic, you know, like learning stuff. I'll try to see what we can do with that one, you know. Let's go back up into some more questions. With what kind of vertex count did you have to work with while working for Playgrounds and Ubisoft? What did you think about other studios utilizing the full Nanite workflow and importing high poly meshes into Unreal? So there's a bunch of stuff that I can't say, right? But all the fancy stuff that you see for Unreal is because Unreal is like a very public thing, right? There are crazy talented like there are crazy talented engineers, like almost magicians, that are doing similar stuff or are doing it in different ways that have their own utility. I'll give you an example. I wasn't a part of this project at all, right? But if you look at Assassin's Creed Shadows, for example, they have their own type of nanite workflow. They just don't use it on trees because. So it's really interesting, right? So the engine that they use, they don't have issues in the same way that Unreal Engine does. So the engine, so Unreal Engine currently is running into issues where it can't render like the amount of like opacity that like they've struggled with for a long time, right? And they're trying to come up with a new workflow with Nanite. That's why we're seeing like the voxelization of like Elise and all that kind of stuff. That is their answer to it. It's interesting if you then go and you listen to like a talk from Ubisoft when they were working on like Assassin's Creed Shadows. They have really, really dense foliage, and they don't even use Nanite on that because it was rendering fine before. Which is really interesting, right? So there's like pros and cons to it. But what kind of vertex count? That's a good question. I mean, we were honestly staying within like the normal budgets for like a more traditional workflow when I was at Ubisoft, for example, right? Like pretty low poly actually for what you would expect. Like we didn't really like go crazy with like the budget. I can't remember like any specifics when it comes to the poly counts, right? But yeah, like we kind of made stuff look good without having the need for like nanite and stuff, right? Which again, is like an additional thing, right? And then maybe what do you think about other studios utilizing the full nanite workflow and importing high poly meshes into Unreal? Well, yeah, we talked about that for a little bit as well, right? But they have their own issues. Because if we're talking about that, we then also need to talk about like how Unreal Engine has struggled for the longest time to render games without hitching. That has like a bunch of like complex like underlying issues, right? But I know from like a bunch of people that work for like a variation of studios that have struggled when Lumen came to the scene and it was promoted to be this like, oh yeah, dynamic resolution, dynamic lighting everywhere. It's gonna look really sick, and it kind of looked really good in the tech demo. But then once you want to ship a game on it, it's completely different, and they were struggling with it hard. So yeah, it is like you can look at all the shiny tech and all the presentations and tech demos, but then if you see like the people working with it, just like underneath it, there's gonna be some issues with that. So it's two sides of the same coin. I always tell people to ask artists that got in recently because they have the most recent knowledge. Someone that joined the industry 10 years ago will probably have outdated knowledge. If they haven't continued their research. Well, yeah, that is true, right? Like if we're talking about getting into the games industry, like that's why I'm saying I try to stay up to date, right? Because it is my job to somewhat stay up to date with this stuff. But I can already tell that when I was trying to get into the industry, like I was doing a bunch of stuff that other people weren't doing. Like a lot of people just made use of like, I don't know, those like job platforms. I went to every single studio. I found contact details and I tried to connect them there, right? That I was doing that like 10 years ago when it was still a bit more of a struggle than it is now. There were also tools that I used to like I kind of went crazy with it because I was at a certain point I was like, okay, I need to try some of the crazy things here. I even used like an add-on that will like guess people's like passwords, not passwords, like email addresses from like inside the company so that I could directly connect with them rather than having to, I don't know, send them a thing on like Facebook or something like that back then. Yeah. It's stuff like that where you kind of have to think outside the box and see what everyone else is doing and then see how you can stand out, right? Maybe not the best advice to download like one of those like weird little add-ons that I did, but hey, that's what I did, right? Just like experimenting with it. Slate is saying they still have beautiful trees in Assassin's Creed Shadows. Such dense foliage. Oh yeah, yeah, beautiful stuff. Beautiful. I'm currently researching a bit into the connection between Lumen and Nanite. Some studios go so high poly that they don't need normal maps, while tech artists that work with Lumen are against non-normal use. Well, but here's the thing, right? With that, they promoted it as being a tool that would avoid you to have normal maps. Because I remember in the beginning when it came out, they were making such a big hubbub about it because people were asking like, wait, how is this going to be more performant? We are adding like high poly meshes into our engine. How is that going to be like more memory saving, right? And they were specifically talking about like the memory that the game takes up, right? So Unreal Engine did this demo, and they still have it in their documentation, I think, where they said like, hey, this is how we're saving the budget because we're actually not using a couple of textures, and we make use of more tileable textures because we actually have like geometry detail that we can lean on instead of normals, right? So they promoted it themselves, and then a lot of studios like found that out, that was not true, right? They kind of just like fucked around and find out. It's yeah, it's interesting. I still think no normal map is crazy, especially with AAA quality sculpts. Well, yeah, you can kind of decimate it to like a degree where you can just lean on the geometry rather than a normal map, right? Because if you have to go back, right? Like normal maps exist because we just didn't have like the hardware power to get those like really highly detailed geometry into the game, right? So a normal map is kind of like a hack to get around the whole thing. A really, really clever hack. But I think the end goal is that we don't use normal maps at all and then just use geometry, right? Which is what we're getting closer and closer to. But yeah, it also doesn't mean that we just can't like chuck in stuff and then hope that it's fine, you know? We have to be considerate about it. Because games are still, even though hardware is like so crazy right now, that yeah, we still need to be considerate on how we use it, right? Plus, also, if you think about like your market, right? Not everyone is going to have like the latest and greatest. Yeah, but geometry doesn't compensate for detail. However, I do agree on the end goal, but I think it's far. Um, yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? Like, I think we're so there's a part of us that is so fantasizing that loves to fantasize about like, oh, we want to create more detail, more detail, more detail. That no one really we're getting into the issue where no one is asking why. Like, why do we need to have more detail, right? Because we've gotten to such a degree that, let's say, we've not really seen like drastic increases in like visual fidelity, right? I feel like more of the increases in like artistic fidelity we've seen on like lighting technology or something like that, right? So I think that if we have a conversation about like, okay, why do we need that amount of geometry, right? Like, why do we need to? Like, if it speeds up the work or something like that, I can get behind it. But just doing more stuff for I don't know, more sake doesn't really matter to me, right? I would rather have like a well art directed game than a game that is just shoved full of like high quality meshes, you know. And it's weird. I feel like we sort of lost track of that. Like, what is always interesting, and I keep thinking back at this myself, but like when I grew up playing games, I had to use my brain to make up some of the detail that was missing, right? And it allowed for a more fantastical game experience, as in like I know that not everything is defined and it's trying to give me something, but I still have to fill in the gaps, right? Where now all that stuff is done for you. So I feel I don't know, maybe this is like my personal inclination, I think, but I feel like we've lost something in that transition. And like sometimes it's good to go back to that. Like play like a lo-fi game, or like, I don't know, play like let's say play like Oblivion or something like that, right? Because they managed to create like a world that felt fully integrated and that people wanted to be a part of without the need to have like really dense stuff, right? It is cool that we can, but should we? Because some oh, I think see. Yeah, let's stick on to this topic for a little bit. I know you're not a tech artist, but do you have any insights on how Unreal Engine compresses memory for the final disk space? Or what kind of mindset did you approach that in your career? So the only thing that I really needed to care about when it comes to not necessarily disk space, because honestly, disk space in this day and age like doesn't really matter anymore, right? The main way that I interacted with it is trying to do more with less. So modular kits, reusing textures, using tileable textures over like making unique texture all the time. But it kind of depends on project to project basis, right? So for example, on big AAA projects, you usually have like a database of stuff that you can already use ready to go, right? Built by other people, material artists and all that kind of stuff. Whereas with Planet Coaster, for example, it was more like we would create like stuff on a one-to-one basis, even for all the assets, and try to do some like modular stuff here and there. But yeah, the sizes, like the poly counts that we were using were like so small, and the texture size was so small that I think we had some really interesting like compression techniques and like the way that we would batch things together and like get it into like a certain atlas size and all that kind of stuff. There was some really clever stuff going on in the background that I don't know a thing about. But most of the time when I interacted with it, it's just you kind of have to be aware of it, but you're not going to interact with the systems itself. Slate is saying geometry doesn't compensate for detail. However, I do agree at the end, because some hard surface assets rely on stronger normal maps to achieve some of that geometry itself. Yeah, I just wonder, yeah, I guess you're right. Like, I mean, you're basically talking about like exaggerating stuff, right? With a texture is gonna be way easier to do in a texture, because you can just like increase the intensity of, let's say, your normal strength or something like that, rather than a geometry, right? Because then we are talking about displacing, right? If you want to do it that way. So you can, but if you're talking about like really fine detail, we're gonna have to talk about like an amount of geometry that I don't think we've hit just yet. But I'm sure we're gonna get there. I'm sure we're gonna get there. Or maybe like this is like kind of on the periphery, right? And it doesn't really apply to games. But I've always been kind of like interested in, let's say, Gaussian splatting, because I see some like tech people working with Gaussian splatting, and I wonder what like the technical restrictions and limitations and stuff like that is. But that could also be a thing, right? Where you don't really, I don't know, where you just like scan or generate or whatever you want to do, like a game world, and you just have it as like a point cloud or something. I have no idea. That's more on like the frontier of things, I feel, not actual game dev stuff. Anika is saying, as an environment artist, suppose I like to do generalist stuff more, but what if someone much more senior in the industry tells me that I should focus on level art side and they see a potential in me? Doing that, then what should I do? Well, here's the thing. Like, sometimes people with experience, I think someone else said it before, right? Sometimes it's not because I have like all that experience that I'm necessarily going to give the right advice for you, right? If I know you to like a very personal level, I'm gonna make that feedback like highly specialized. But the stuff that we're saying in this chat, for example, I'm trying to be on purpose very generalistic, so that I don't push people down a path that is not made for them, right? Sometimes in those cases, if you want to get at some actual applicable stuff to do, I would then talk to 5, let's say, senior people in the industry and say like, hey, look, ask them the same question and then take the average of those 5 people and see what that advice is gonna be like, right? Because let's say in this case, the one person says you need to focus more on the level art side, and then you have 4 other people that are saying like, no, you need to focus on this instead. Then you know where to go, right? I am a big fan of just like looking at data, right? And that's kind of the way that I look at feedback. You don't necessarily want to ask one person feedback. You want to ask multiple people feedback and then see how you can average out the data that you just got. I used Oodle to compress textures on the disk. It's a bit lossy, but you can set how much compression you want. Other than that, I think everything is already as compressed as it can be. Yeah. Vitaly is saying you can do the same thing with vertex normals as well. Both pixel and vertex contains the same vector data. It just feels weird to apply filters to vertices, but it works. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of cool stuff that you can do, right? Like, for example, one of the things that I had a lot of fun with when I was working like my medieval scene, I felt like I was really struggling with like, hey, there's this concept of like RGB masks, right? Where you have like a second UV channel and you store like your UV data in there, and then you have like a mask that you can uniquely unwrap and texture and all that kind of stuff to get like unique data based on masks, right? I was like, okay, I kind of want to do that, but I don't want to do this stupid workflow of like going from Blender to Substance Painter, having to set it up in a specific way, all that kind of stuff, having to generate like a second UV map. I don't want to do all that stuff. So how can I speed this process up? And then I kind of got to the point where I started using the modeling tools inside of Unreal Engine to then bake those masks for me based on like your ambient occlusion, your world position, all those kind of things, right? And you can effectively store the same data in like your vertex color rather than in a texture map. There's going to be different restrictions and limitations to that as well, but it is really, really interesting to play around with those elements and kind of see if you can do different things with like data that already exists, right? Sorry, Picken. Let's see. I would love to design the overall layouts of places in games, villages, cities, etc. More so than the fine details. What would be a good program to learn with and maybe build a layout portfolio? This goes back to an earlier conversation. You cannot just build a layout portfolio. Look at, in that case, you just basically want to become an environment artist, right? There is a subcategory of environment artists that are called level artists that are most of the time going to be spending on actually just like set dressing places. But it is, well, first, it is highly unlikely that you're just going to get a job by only doing level art. Second, it is also really scary because that is so niche that as soon as something comes up, or like, I don't know, we find like a procedural way or like supported by AI or something like that to set dress quicker, your job is done, right? And that's all you put your stock in. So I would think about diversifying your skills a little bit so that you can also model and texture a little bit and all that kind of stuff. And that's going to give you way more opportunities rather than just focusing on something so niche. So welcome to the club. I mean, that's basically what I wanted to do. I just wanted to build worlds, right? But that meant that I had to go through the production pipeline, the way that it's used, right? Like going from like a single prop to then building small dioramas to then building bigger and bigger worlds. But you kind of have to isolate like all the skills for that. Yes. Gaussian splatting is very interesting. Great for animations as well. Moving points. Yeah. Yeah, there's some like interesting stuff to play around with, you know? And that's what I mean. Like, this industry is constantly moving. So that's why I love to keep up with like all the presentations that are happening, or I go to conferences, because you get some insights that otherwise you wouldn't really get, right? Or you talk to people that are on like the forefront, like some of the people that we have on workshops, for example. For example, a good one is Yu Chu, um, a staff artist at Zero Matter, I think that's what the company is called. He has worked on Last of Us and Concord and some other games. He's going to be joining us in like a couple of days, and he's going to be talking about Substrate, which is like an area of like material work that I don't really have a clue about. I kind of know under the hood what it's supposed to be, right? It's trying to be more in line with what you would expect from, like, let's say, materials in Blender or Max or Maya, right? Like when you're doing V-Ray stuff, for example. But it's very interesting that we're gonna get some insights from a person who's been really diving deep into it, and it kind of feels like a shortcut. So that's gonna be cool. I'm looking forward to it. Artem Zunko is saying level art is not for the weak. Oh, I think making games in general is not for the weak. It is tough. Because you have to get into the games industry, and then you have to stay in the games industry as well, which is also difficult. It is not easy out there. The vast majority of games that I played, I just feel the town's layout could be so much more interesting. Yeah, well, there's a lot of thinking that goes into designing town layouts. And I think 95% is going to be invisible to the player. But yeah, there's a lot of thinking that goes into it. It's yeah, games are made by like small towns these days, right? So yeah. I can see the ambition. And I can also see, like, there's people that probably feel the same way as you do inside of those companies that you um that you call out when saying like the games that I've played, right? But it's just sometimes it's nothing to be done, you know? Someone higher up made a decision, or I don't know, the conclusion was that this was going to be the way that they were going to do it. It is yeah. And there's a lot of stuff like that, right? In every discipline. It is you gotta be able to do the work, but then also you gotta be able to promote the work and sell the work to the people that are in the right positions to then actually be able to do the work more efficiently. It's interesting. It's definitely more of a political game at that point. But you're definitely right though. There's talking about this, talking about town layouts, there was a former architect that did a talk on CD Projekt Red and how they do their city in their city in Night City, right? I mean, it was from a person who is working there. So it was really cool to hear them talk about like what they learned about architectural design and like city design specifically. It was a really interesting talk. In-Game Job has also published the games industry employment survey from 2025. Okay. Let's have a look, actually. I'd be curious. In-Game Job. There's a lot of these surveys going on, huh? Because there's this one, there's another one going around as well. We can dive into it. I'd be curious, actually. Where do we go? Hold on. Let me see if we can get it. Doo-doo-doo. And okay. Let's have a look, shall we? How big is it? 70 pages. Okay. Let's have a look. Let's switch over to this. Hey, that's the right one. That is the link. Oh, sorry, Leia. I think links by default are blocked for like people that are just like members on YouTube. All right. So let's have a quick look here. Highlights from 2025. 26 experienced layoffs in the past year, with game designers, artists, and QA hit the hardest. 13% left the games industry entirely. I kind of want to see where they're getting the data first. 9 time and a third at an international level. Sorry, I want to see the data first here. So a total of 1,650 respondents from 85 countries worldwide participated in the study. That's good. We divide Europe in 2 regions, European Union and non-European Union. What does that mean? So for the sake of clarity, the following countries were grouped together as a region Europe. And then non-Europe. Oh, okay. 700 people from like Europe. Okay. Okay. That's interesting. Almost the same amount of people from like non-Europe, right? From that region. Yeah. 60% male, 25% female, 9% others, 8% junior, 25% mid, 35% junior, 29% lead and top, 21% have over 10 years or more experience. And then, okay, cool. That gives us some good insight. So it seems like, yeah, this is going to be like mid and senior heavy, right? So it's definitely more up like the seniority rank, which is interesting. So we're not really going to get like a lot of insights for juniors per se, especially not from, well, like the study we're probably going to get from like juniors is going to be a little bit less reliable because just how much we have on it. Let's go back to the highlights here. At a junior level, 39% exited the industry. That is, oh, that is crazy. 40% exited the industry in the last year, I guess. Marketing professionals, and then 13% left the industry entirely in the past year. Which honestly, I feel like that is more like a normal number. I feel like the games industry has always been like a really tough industry to kind of build yourself in, right? Let's assume that we're doing good, right? The industry is healthy and all that kind of stuff. What games industry still demand you to do is like move to a location, right? So you have to uproot your entire family to work on a new thing. And what also happens is that there's a healthy amount of turnover at the end of every project anyway. I think on average that is like 10% or something like that. Like when a game ships, like 10% of that company, like 10% of that that group leaves, right? The people that worked on that project. So there is like a healthy turnover. So I'm not surprised to see this. Not surprised to see that at all. 15% have been job hunting over a year or are still searching. Yeah, I've seen the same thing, even between my friends. Because again, like there's a couple of different experiences here, right? From like a junior level, there's barely any job openings, right? So they are kind of hitting into the wall where it's just like it's just a funnel, right? But when it comes to senior people, which I also know a couple of people that have still been looking around for like quite a long time, they just don't have like the flexibility anymore, right? Usually they've put down roots somewhere and now their company's gone for whatever reason and they're looking for something local, so they don't want to move again, or they want to do remote, but that's also very restrictive, right? There's only a limited amount of jobs for that too. Among programmers, 80% say it takes a year or more to land a new role. Yeah, that is an interesting one. When changing jobs last year, 28% accepted worse terms, either lower salary or lower position. I'm not surprised by that. I am not surprised. Half of the respondents report experiencing professional burnout. 41 have a personal project on the side, most often programmers, game designers, and artists, which I'm not too surprised by. QA specialists are the most skeptical about AI. 24% neither use them for work nor plan to. The highest rate of any role. That's interesting. I was interested to see artists in here. I guess so. Here's the thing. I do think that like QA specialists currently are the most affected by this, because if I don't even know, like I'm just guessing, right? Because I've not seen it really, but I'm just guessing that the tests that they have to run to validate games and all that kind of stuff, like that is probably way easier for you as a QA specialist than be like, hey, look, I'm just going to use this tool. It's going to be way quicker for me to set up like this simple test that I want to do rather than trying to like roll it for myself or something like that, right? So it gives you like more flexibility within that role. But depends heavily on the company as well. Because yeah, I've seen companies where QA specialists are like very flexible in their role, and I've also seen the opposite happen too. All right, probably gonna skip through a bunch of stuff here. Let's have a look. So we're gonna start with the salary data. Let's go. It's always interesting to see this. Art at the bottom, which I'm again not surprised by. Senior level median gross per year. Yeah. I do have to say that I was like comfortably above this. So I think the reason why I say that is because I think that the real hesitancy with like artists is just because we've never really thought about ourselves as like business, right? There's this whole attitude of like, oh my God, I'm so lucky to work in games and I get to do art for a living. This is freaking crazy, right? I think we need to step away from that. Honestly, we need to be more business minded. We need to be more like open about like what we want and like how we want to go for that, right? Because otherwise we are gonna remain at the bottom of the barrel here. Obviously, like there's some other things there as well. For example, it's the most visually appealing. It's also like the visually appealing as in like it's the most attractive from like a perspective of a young person coming into games, right? Like usually what they see is like, oh, I want to make the art for it. Like they're not going to be thinking about like, oh, I want to make the design, right? Because that is something a bit more hidden. But yeah. Yeah, that is very interesting. Oh, let's see. He continues. So, I guess we're not really... It's weird. HR makes like a big jump, which is really interesting. Oh, this is mid-level. Okay. Art and design are lumped together, which is kind of a dangerous one here. 20,000 though. Yeah. God. Yeah. Okay. That is also pretty low though. Dang. That is savage. Slate is saying, give me money. I'm the reason your project looks good. That's how it should be. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you have to sell it a bit better than that. But yeah, it comes down to that, right? Like without us and without like the amount of people that you have on a project, like it's kind of crazy. Like we really like craft our way into this industry to then kind of, I don't know, kind of get shoved to the side sometimes, you know? It's kind of ridiculous. Let's see. Oh, this is interesting. So they have like salary data comparisons between the years as well. Oh, by the way, if we're looking at this document and you say like, hey, look, I've got a question about this, let me know and then we can talk about it. Where's art? Senior level, non-EU. Let's start with the EU first. Ooh, yeah, we can really see what's happening here in art, right? Like a drastic shift in just like, again, I think the fragility of making art, right? It's just like, hey, I just want to do art. I'm gonna lowball myself because it's like the way in, right? Um, I also feel that we've had this like wave of like salary transparency like a couple of years ago that was like really really good, but we kind of slowed down with that a little bit. So maybe that also has like a bit of an effect too. But yeah, like artists are in general like not that great or like promoting for themselves, right? Let's see. Yeah, this is rough. Again, it is art and design like lumped together, which I feel like honestly, like design is gonna push up the numbers. Hi Piggin, thanks for the question. So how can I join the Discord? There's a link in the description. It is a paid Discord though, so gotta be aware of that. But that's where you can join if you wanted to. Management salaries. Yeah, we're not really getting into those, huh? Interesting. Yeah, it is crazy. Let's see, what is this here? So this is median annual salary by platform. This year we continue to investigate whether there's a correlation between the income and the genre of the project the game industry professional is working in. Oh, we were also curious to see if there's a difference in salaries between those releasing their games on mobile. Additionally, we wanted to find out if there's some type of monetization affects income levels. Why are social networks in here? Like I wonder, is that like Facebook games and all that kind of stuff? I wonder. Because yeah, you kind of have like traditional PC, right? Nintendo Switch, console, mobile stores, Google Play, App Store, web and browser. Well, how is this different from that then? I guess web browser is like anything but social networks. But that's an interesting. Literally was about to say the art is lowering the numbers. Yeah, I think so. Unfortunately, we're pretty good at that, shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit. So they cut our costs to pay more for management. What a smart move. Never thought the PMs earn so much. Well, here's also a thing with this data, right? Is that we gotta be careful with like looking at the data, right? Because we don't know. Ideally, you would have like the same sample group, right? So to see if there's like a correlation between like what they have gone through individually. Whereas the sample group that we have now could just be like from like a wider, I don't know, like a different range of people, right? Which is like 1,600 people sounds like a lot, and just if you look at it on face value, it is. But if you then start stripping them down into like their individual categories, that's where we can also see like bigger fluctuations too. Um, because I will say that like I know that the salaries that I've been seeing are like way above, and I'm talking about junior level salaries in the UK, right? They are like higher than any of them that I see here. I think my estimate for the junior entry level salary in the UK will be, if we broaden the range a little bit, it will be 26 to 30k. Or let's say 26 to like 32k or something like that. Like 32k is like when you're really lucky at like a company that does pay a lot. But I've seen and worked with people that are like around that range. So some of this stuff is like really low. But again, it's like Europe, right? So yeah, depending on where you go. For example, France, I know in general some information about like the income of that. And I know that is like way lower in comparison to the UK, for example. So that's also going to be pulling the average down, like the median down. Um, Leia saying web browser can be interactive ads. Yeah, but this is about game creation, right? It's not just ads. right? Yeah, because they wanna pull a correlation between the income level and the genre of a project a game industry professional is working on. So I guess a project a game industry professional is working on. So I guess that could include ads as well. We're also curious to see if there's a difference in salaries between those releasing their games on mobile devices and those developing on PC. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not sure what that means, but yeah. Let's see. We got publisher, product company. Oh, this is where it gets interesting, right? So we have the brackets. So hyper casual, mid-core, casual, hardcore, indie, kids, and then education. Yeah, not surprising to see this, right? And then here, oh, interesting. MMOs are really high. What? That is super interesting. I was not expecting MMOs to be this high. Word. Okay. Yeah, because Battle Royale is here. I guess we're looking at salary data, right? Maybe salaries from some nations are lowering the median. Oh yeah, for sure. I think that's why they had to do this breakup between like basically Western Europe and like Eastern Europe for the most part, right? Because I feel honestly, if you ask me, like this is where the jobs are going to. And this is where the jobs currently are, right? I mean, it's not that this is going to completely empty and they're all going to go to like non-European countries, but whenever I see job openings now, the majority that I see is just like in here. Artem is saying for Spain, Poland, Ukraine, and some other countries like Romania, Bulgaria, etc., the salary for juniors is like 1,700 euros a month. So 2,400 in the median is kind of the reality. Yeah, that's what I'm assuming, right? Like it's going to be the median across like the entirety of the EU, depending on which one we're looking at, right? But this is crazy, just seeing the stark difference, right? Like this, if you're thinking about like why companies are moving or like they have like all these outsourced studios in like those really cheap countries, this is why, right? You can kind of see why. Like this is the number that they have to pay like as a median, like for like a person living in Europe, and this is when they just live like a couple of countries over for the same thing. It's crazy. Right. Satisfaction with current salary. Okay. Who's the most dissatisfied? Juniors, artists across all Europe. Let's go. Again, not surprising, but yeah. This year's results show a decline in salary satisfaction across seniority levels compared to 2024, which again, also not surprising, right? Because there is so much pressure to now stay at your current company that the company almost doesn't need to give you like a salary in indexation or like an increase in salary, right? Because they know that the likeliness of you're gonna stay is highly likely, right? This decline is most visible among entry levels and mid-level specialists whom faced salary freezes, reduced bonuses, and slower career progression in the past year. All of this makes sense, right? Because there's not a lot of pressure on the companies now to give you better stuff because they know that a lot of people are just not looking to jump ship. Who's the happiest? Programmers in both regions. Programmers and then seniors. Oh, C-level executives. Oh, and HR, of course. Of course. God damn HR. That must be a weird one. Cuz that must be such a sour thing. It's It must be such a sour thing that let's say you're part of like a big layoff and you are the person that has to sit through like all those calls. You are not going to be happy about that. But then again, like on the opposite side, like that is your job, right? So you get to keep your job. So it's just, God, so weird. Do not like it. Oh, we're going to go. Okay, this is interesting. We're going to go into some quotes. So we got some quotes from respondents, which is really cool. So, unpaid for the last 6 months, the company ran out of money. I've heard this story before. There's like a lot of companies in Europe that did the same thing. Crytek, for example, was one of them at a certain point where they were just like, "Hey, look, we ran out of money, guys. Sorry, not gonna get paid." Fortunately, never have been through that myself. Knock on wood. Another person is saying my US manager refused to give me a raise, saying I think it's enough for Europe. Oh, okay. So this is a person that's probably working remote from like a European like country, and they're getting kind of screwed by like their US manager because they probably got them for cheap. Right? Because this is the thing that we said last time, right? You have your salary from the US. Let's say for a senior, what was it? Like 120 to 150 or something like that. Let's say you're a senior here, you get like 50 or 70, like you're really good. So that leaves like a big margin in between the two, right? But that's also going to mean that if they get you for cheap, I mean, they might give you a little bit more, but like they don't want to go up to like all the way what they spend on people in America, right? They kind of want to move away from that. The company keeps piling more and more work onto employees without increasing salaries, and top management keeps making poor decisions. Ah, yes. Yeah. Like Artyom is saying, let's pray. Let's give a moment of silence for those C-level executives. You know, they have it rough. This is kind of sad. Like, please just give me a job. Money isn't the issue as long as I get enough to cover my living expenses and a pack of cigarettes a day. Yeah, that is sad because this, while completely understandable, is also why the range of the wages has gone so much lower. Right? It's because of this. Again, completely understandable, not their fault, but that's kind of what the market reality is now, right? That's why we're seeing this shift. After 12 years in the industry, I've never felt more disappointed in how my profession is treated. More than ever, employers make it seem like it's our fault just to justify lower salaries and expecting one person to do the work for three. While I do believe that you excel by that to excel you should broaden your skills, the demands placed on a single role, let's say a 2D artist, have become absurd. Yeah, again, like the power is in the company's hands, right? That's what we're seeing. Trusting companies is gone. This is honestly the biggest thing to me. I've talked about it like a bunch of stuff before. AAA before was the safe haven, right? Like if you wanted to get some sort of stability in the games industry, you tried to aim for a AAA studio because they had multiple projects, they had big teams, they had flexibility, right? That is the biggest thing that's completely destroyed now. It's the trust. Because before that, it was like, okay, it's trust and risk, right? They kind of go hand in hand to me. Where it's like, if you go for an indie, it's really risky, but there might be like a big upside. So that's why a lot of people went for AAA because they were like, okay, we're gonna kind of keep it safe. We're gonna reduce our risk, and then in that way, we can sort of get a dependable income, right? That is gone now. So like, this trust and the trust in the future of games is gone. We're overworked, underpaid, poorly trained, and often expected to take on responsibility far beyond our roles without compensation. I've been tasked with marketing, UI, texturing, engine implementation. Oh my god, this is crazy. Marketing, UI, texturing, engine implementation, and much more, all on top of an already overloaded job. And this is why, remember all the way in the beginning, I said that you have to have a backup plan, right? Like do something on the side, like try to make a little bit of money on the side, put it in like an emergency fund or something like that. Try to give yourself the benefit of being able to say no. because you want to be able to avoid this. Like, it's honestly not worth it. Like, as soon as you get into this, you want to be able to say, no, I'm not doing it. Because it is the main reason why this happens is because there's no clear boundaries drawn or set by the people that are doing this, right? And again, understandably so, right? Because there's so much pressure and there's so much fear also with like, hey, what if they fire me? You know? Like I'm gone. But if you have that little bit of backup, you can then say like, hey, look, I'm not gonna do this. I am already doing everything within my responsibilities that I got hired for. That's what I'm gonna keep doing, right? Because I'm already like running over, and or maybe I can just make it work with the time allotted, right? But that is also where crunch and all that kind of stuff comes in, right? Yeah. Roger's saying, AAA safe haven. Yeah, that's what I mean though, right? It's gone. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize this. And that's where we see a lot of students and university grads and like all those people just being like, hey, look, screw that. I don't want whatever that is. I'm just gonna start my own studio from the ground up, you know? Again, super risky. But if you have risk on one side and risk on another side, you might as well take the risk where you have like complete ownership, right? Might as well go for that. Racer is saying, when do you think the games industry will be getting better than it currently is? Any current good signs yet? So here's the thing that I always say. If you're gonna wait until the games industry is gonna get better, I don't think that's gonna happen. I think the games industry is shifting. And I think it's shifting in potentially good ways for us working within it, but it's gonna take time. The reason that I always say the same thing is that a lot of talented people are like now leaving AAA studios, and they're starting up their own studios, but they need to have time to then build up like their own kind of like talent pool and then be able to hire juniors, right? And I think that's where I personally believe we're gonna see more meaningful game development for the most part, right? So that's what I'm hoping for. Because if we're just trying to wait around until like the games industry is going to get better, I think we've been saying that for a couple of years now. And I don't think there's an incentive for this industry to become better, right? Or like at least from the top necessarily, right? That's why I believe in like the grassroots thing, right? Like really seeing like from the bottom up like what is changing compared to top down, right? Wait, what? Gender gap is a thing? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There's a lot of really interesting I think the one that I can remember, there's a lot of interesting articles. The one that I can remember was from like Activision Blizzard like a couple of years ago where they promoted like their first I don't know if it was um their first female to like a C-suite position. But then she figured out that she was still getting underpaid compared to like her peers and then left like 3 months in or something like that. And this is basically what we're seeing, right? So it is still prevalent. This is interesting, but also not surprised. Because this seems to be like HR and recruitment is largely dominated by female. Sounds so weird to say, by females? I don't know. By woman. Yeah, let's see. Not really that surprised by this. It's also really hard. This is where like we need to have like a better insights into the data, right? Because you're gonna have this automatically depending from studio to studio, right? So I kind of want to see it is such a tricky topic to me. And I love discussing this as always. but it is such a tricky topic because like what I think is that the issue really is with like how, what is the best word of saying this? Like how male figures are perceived to be more outspoken or more authoritative, right? And that's what you kind of want, right? Like as soon as you go up to the ladder, you want to be seen as like authoritative. So that you are the person who makes decisions and kind of gets to it. And that is, for the most part, still dominated by guys, right? Because we see a lot of these conversations about this topic where then in one-on-ones a girl or a woman gets asked to do the same thing, and when they become a little bit more authoritative, then it's really weird because now it's not like, oh, that's not what we're used to from you, right? So we're still bumping into like a lot of issues around like the social dynamics between like men and women, and I think that's underlying what we're seeing here. Compensations and benefits. Ooh, a monthly bonus. Sick. Project bonus, animal bonus, no financial bonuses. Ooh, that's rough. That is rough. I don't like that. Compensation and benefits. Hold on. Let me link this in the chat as well for everyone who wants to follow. I'm gonna be skipping through like a bunch of stuff. I love my job, but because my company operates internationally, I'm technically classified as a contractor, even though internally I'm treated as a full-time salaried employee. As a result, I miss out on benefits. Ooh, yeah. So here's the thing where like if you don't know how to negotiate this sort of stuff, and I gotta say, like I'm also still like really, really green with all this stuff, right? But you kind of have to factor in, like if you miss out on those benefits, you have to factor those into your calculation, right? So that you can compensate for that by just getting more money. What is this? An employee net promoter score. So NPS stands for Net Promoter Score, a metric used in customer experience programs. NPS measures the loyalty of a customer to a company. NPS scores are measured with a single question survey and reported with a number of minus 100 plus 100. A higher score is more desirable. Below, we'll show you the correlation between eNPS and the various other factors. Okay. Okay, so this is like your employee net promoter score and your years in the games industry. So the more years, so like 11 plus and more, you are way more satisfied, right? Of course, these are the people that are probably making like the big bucks. Well, here's the thing, like they probably make the big bucks, but also there's something really satisfying at being with a company for such a long time and kind of seeing it grow up. Like, I gotta say, like, I had the opportunity to join Frontier before it was like a really, really big company. And it's really cool to be able to be a part of that journey, though. I gotta say, strip away like all the compensation stuff, right? There's something super, super satisfying about that. And I had the opportunity to do the same thing at Ubisoft. Like, I joined Ubisoft Berlin the day before the official opening of the studio, which was awesome. And that by itself, being so early in the whole process, made me more involved as a person of that studio, like as an employee. I kid you not, it was so good, and it was so fun seeing the company grow up and kind of going through like all the mistakes that they did and like seeing how they could like develop their staff better and all that kind of stuff, right? But it felt like a real company, not something that you just join and then you get fed into like, I don't know, the routine, and then it's just like, okay, I don't want to do the routine anymore, and then it's like, okay, cool, bye. It felt like a real company that you were a part of. Oh, I mean, yeah, okay. So, yeah, the score compared to overtime frequency. So, oh my god. There's some people doing overtime almost every day, even on weekends. There's no... I'm actually... This is a score that goes from like a -100 to like +100? And we're only seeing -16? What the hell? That is crazy. I would expect this to be at the bottom. Like, I would expect this to be like at least -50 or something like that. This is an interesting one though, because it kind of shows you that there are people who are like probably so engaged with their project or so into like the whole like grind set kind of attitude that they really enjoy what they do, right? That it doesn't affect their score to be lower. That is crazy. I've worked for 2 years at a studio, starting as a junior 3D artist and later becoming a mid-level. I was fired after questioning the lack of funding and salaries, including my own, and pointing out company missteps that led to financial trouble. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, I feel like... yeah, they're probably annoyed with this, you know, like questioning the lack of funding and salaries. But if you start pointing the blame, ooh, yeah, people are not going to be happy with that one. Yeah, that's gonna be personal for some people. Even though you should be able to do this, yeah, I don't think it's perceived well by a lot of people out there. The official reason was I was dismissed for my political views. Okay, interesting. Could lead to some additional context. I lost my team connections and in a way my professional identity as a 3D artist. I mean, this I get it, but also don't let one studio define who you are as a person, please. I get it. It's a shock. And you kind of have to go through like a little bit of a period of mourning, right? But getting fired from a company, that doesn't mean that you suck as like a 3D artist. You got to give yourself some credit there. And really just, yeah. Think about all the good stuff you've done, right? Even though it's not easy. Ooh, interesting. Okay, so what makes employees local and engaged? And this is by their score by corporation format. This year's chart is a correlation between the ENPS and the work format, showing the same trend as before. Hybrid teams remain the most engaged. Though this is a steep drop down from 15 plus 9% in 2024. Ooh, that's a massive drop down. And remote employees now report a negative score compared to the 7.7. And then on-site employees remain the least engaged. Dang. Okay. Plunging from like 8.1 to like a minus 6.2. That is freaking ridiculous. Dang. Yeah, I feel like exactly what's been said here. So because everything is shifting towards a more negative, I feel like there's just a lot of pressure on people working, no matter, regardless of what like corporation format you're in, and it's just going to be way intenser to just function in any sort of corporation, right? When I took this job, we agreed on a hybrid model. Another quote here: 3 days on site, 2 days remote, but due to some corporate nonsense over hardware standards, I ended up with a full desktop tower instead of a laptop. Okay. When I raised this with my manager, I was jokingly told I could take the PC home on my remote days. Oh my god. Oh my god. That's some fucking bullshit right there. That's some freaking shenanigans. Oh my god. I was jokingly told that I could take the PC home on my remote days. Oh my god, you're taking a full desktop home. That is sick. Oh my god. Well, it's been a year and a half and I still have the same desktop. Jesus. Okay. Profit share. Yeah, of course, that's going to be like the most attractive one. Monthly bonus. Oh, project bonus is actually pretty high up there too. Let's see. We're going to be skimming through all this stuff. Non-financial bonuses. I'll probably skim through this like after our thingy as well. Oh, AI adoption. Let's have a look at this. The share of professionals who use AI regularly and find it useful has nearly doubled in the past 2 years, reaching 63% in Europe and 69% in non-European unions. EU regions. At the same time, the number of those who have never used AI and don't plan has dropped by more than a third. Okay, so more people are adopting it, and they're using it more regularly. Skepticism towards AI continues to decline, and the technology is increasingly viewed as a practical tool rather than a threat. That's good. This is also why I mentioned that you should be aware of these things, right? Like you should at least have a look at what it does so that you can better protect yourself at what it's trying to do in the worst case, and also make use of the stuff that you think were like damaging before you used it, but actually are not damaging, right? So yeah, because to be fair, like I also do use like AI, like as in like for writing stuff, right? It's massively useful for some of the coursework that we're doing, for example, where we have to sift through like thousands and thousands of like, I don't know, grammar correction, or like maybe like reforming the sentence structure, right? Because everyone kind of writes in their own style. We still have to do like all the heavy lifting, don't get me wrong. It is really good at like cleaning up, but you can't lose track of it, you know? Because if you lose track, that's when it goes like haywire. You kind of have to babysit it, but it does speed up the workflow. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cheeky little AI thing there. Let's see. I use AI in my work and I find it helpful. I don't use AI and I don't plan to. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Like honestly, I don't use AI in art because I don't see the value in it. That's the real thing. Like I really don't see the value in it at all. Like, yeah. But not for art. That's the main question here. C-level executives could say that 70% of artists use it for creating art. Well, yeah, but this is like self-reporting, right? So people that do the survey, they report on themselves. It's not just C-level executives saying that the artists use it, right? So that would be like a different thing, because I think what I've read is that overall C-level executives are like way more positive about like AI usage, right? Which you would expect to. And then people down at like the developer level, they're like way more negative about it, right? So there's like a real disconnect happening there too. Yeah, because like, I mean, if you look at it, like planning, like just like meeting summaries, like breaking down analytics, like HR, like all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, I can see why they adopted like the quickest. These roles may face barriers to trust, tool maturity, or creative integrity. I think a lot of it has to do with creative integrity as well. Like, yeah. I mean, that could be a reason in the future, potentially. But I think this still needs to be driven from like, what is the actual use case for using it, right? Because right now I don't really see any tools for like 3D that like, even if we go to like the EA statement, right, that we were talking about before, where they are thinking about using AI generation for like material creation. I can see that. Like, I can see that. Like a flat surface, like a tileable texture, like if you build some stuff around it and you build like a good tool, I can see that, unfortunately. But with like 3D and all the shit that it's spitting out, like, I really can't see that. I think that's like a massive hurdle that needs to be overcome. And I think a lot of people are trying to sell it as like, oh, it's easy, we can just generate stuff. But it's not. And I think also just the artistic integrity, right? It's like we are still struggling with this idea of like what is copyright, right? We still need to have like an honest and serious discussion of what is happening there. But the reason why we haven't had it yet is because everyone is just thinking about their creative edge, right? Because like if we don't do it, then China will do it or whatever. This is like one of the reasons why I'm like pretty happy with like living in Europe, because Europe does take this stuff seriously. Like even if it stifles like, you know, like freaking, I don't know, freaking tech companies or whatever, right? Like there are legislations that are going in or are at least being talked about on like a high level in Europe, which is something that I'm really, really happy about. Right. 10 more minutes and then we'll do some feedback as well because it's getting pretty late already. Maybe in the future we'll move this forward a little bit. Hello, Harry. Good to see ya. But this was really interesting to read through, though. Work arrangement trends. Remote? What? That is what? Where infrastructure outsourcing models and cost efficient may make remote first more viable. Meanwhile, EU-based teams are more likely to maintain. Oh, I see. But that is crazy though. 60% of people in Europe are working remote. I didn't realize that the number was that high. Jeez. I honestly thought that it was going to be that on-site was going to be 60%. And then hybrid was going to be around that. And then like 30% was going to be remote. It's crazy. Likelihood of being laid off in the coming year on a scale to, let's see, who feels at risk of being laid off? Okay. People in sound, art and design is pretty high. Analytics is low. What? That's interesting. Why is analytics so low? Harry is saying, aren't more studios wanting to people to come back to hybrid or on site? Well, according to this data, not really, right? Because most of those like big like shifts have already happened, but it seems like a lot of people are still like working full remote. That's why I'm so surprised too, because I was assuming the same thing. Yeah. Oh, wait, am I reading this wrong? On an average, we asked respondents to rate their sense of job security in the games industry right now on a 5-point scale, whereas 0 means very insecure and 5 means very secure. Oh, I was reading this wrong. Okay. Am I reading this wrong? Yeah, 0 feels very insecure. This is confusing. Because I feel like they're probably not concerned, right? They think they're good. And then with sound and like all that kind of stuff, that's going to be heavily affected by AI. So I'm assuming that they're more stressed out. Yeah. I think they flipped the numbers accidentally. I feel, yeah. Because I think this section refers to this section down here, I think. Because that, yeah, that wouldn't make sense. Come on. Anyway. Wouldn't a co-founder and a founder be like a 5? No, I don't think so. Because like, so think about my position, right? I'm technically a founder. I get to decide where the budget goes, right? So Like if I for whatever reason or if the business isn't going to do well, like I'll just shrink it to like the size of me, right? And I think that's what a lot of people are doing, right? Well, a lot of people are doing. I think that's a likeliness, especially with smaller companies. That is the outcome, right? So yeah, because I think yeah, unless you're like I don't know, if you're running like a big company, you're like insecure about funding, then maybe. But yeah, let's see. How safe do you feel in the gaming industry right now? On a scale from 0 to 5. Okay, so 5 means very secure from this point on. Okay. Yeah, everyone kind of is not feeling great about it. Because again, like I mean, yeah, pour one out for like the top level people, right? But they're also on like a lot of stress because they saw like a massive influx into like their space like a couple of years ago during COVID. Um and then what has happened right now is that all that funding is dried up, so they kind of had to do with like all the stuff that they had back then. Oh, Mateo. So yeah, so they feel zero basically means very insecure, and 5 means very secure, right? So that's also what the color suggests. That also means that like a trainee is most most insecure about their job, right? Of course, and then it kind of goes up, which kind of makes sense. But they're all really close together though. How safe do you feel in the gaming industry right now? By profession, yeah, I think we're at the bottom. Also because you have to think about it, right? Like art is one of the most intensive things that we do on a project because you always need like really big teams to make like let's say a triple A like sized game, right? We need a lot of artists to just do that. Which also means that especially now there's no incentive for the company to keep that whole team on. So what they do is they just have like a lot of people on contract. And then once they get like the majority of the work done, they shrink again to like a core team that can get like the thing over the finish line, right? Okay, we're gonna go into some spicy respondent quotes. So, screw layoffs, screw toxic workplaces, screw job instability in gaming, and months of unemployment. I think that's what a lot of people feel right now. Um, the past 3 years have been rough. I got an offer from a major studio and joined, but my visa was denied and I had to give up the job. That sucks. That sucks. Then I landed an offer from an established studio in Europe and relocated, only for the company's investors to pull out, and I lost that job too. Yeah, that is just like from one fire to the next thing. God. Have you changed jobs in the past year? Yeah. And this is a correlation I feel when it comes to the decrease that we're seeing in salaries because no one's moving. Right? So you're not seeing like a salary increase because everyone is just like, "Ooh, I'm gonna stay here," right? Yeah, there's some more interesting stuff in here. Um Oh, this is an interesting one for us. So, where professionals usually search for a job in the games industry? LinkedIn, 90% of them. Referrals, 63, makes sense. In-game job, I feel like this might be a little bit biased because we are looking at an in-game job survey, right? Here's a link, Harry. It's got it for you. Other game job boards, professional communities on social media, recruitment agencies, and then Glassdoor. Okay, so I want you to look at these numbers and then just be like, okay, you can invest your time in here if you wanted to, but everyone else is doing it. So you need to find another way of going about your time. Still do the LinkedIn stuff, right? But don't put all your eggs in the LinkedIn basket because that is not going to be working out for you too well. Um, do the things that I did, right? Like go to every individual company, right? To hit up people at like networking conventions or something like that. Like you got to think outside the box, right? Slate is saying the exact same thing. You should diversify to increase your chances 100%. Like if you're only doing LinkedIn job market hunting, you are not going to get good results. You might get lucky, but I think, yeah, it's a flawed way of going about it, in my opinion. You gotta find those unique opportunities that not a lot of people know about, right? To increase your chances. What's the most important factor in choosing a new employer? Salary level, work format, work-life balance, responsibilities and scope of the role. This is a tricky one because I mean, a lot of like on all the roles that I've worked, like that changes. That's like a very flexible thing in games. Um, Professional development opportunities, career growth prospects, team and colleagues. Okay. Yeah, I guess choosing a new employer as in like you move there for a new team and colleagues, right? Which I can get. You usually don't move a company just to be like closer with friends. Yeah. Usually that's the thing that like makes you stay though. Let's see, blah blah blah. First location, company mission and impact. No one gives a fuck about like what a company statement or mission is. Oh, why do we write them? It's just like, come on, we gotta make a good game. Come on. How quickly do specialists find a new job? Okay. Up to 3 months if you're specializing. Pretty good. 50% of people. Um Time to find a new job last year by level. Hmm. Yeah. All right, but I'm gonna go through this. And I'll probably do that for some like late night reading. We're gonna switch it up now. Enough reading. We're gonna do some feedback now. So we got a couple of people for feedback. Let me switch up some of the music as well. Let me move that over. There's Leia. Leia knows the deal. Hello, Fair. Good to see you. How are you doing? Let's see. Are we on the right screen? We are. Let me get up Discord as well. Right, Leia. Let's start with you today. So, Leia had a question about how to basically come up with ideas for your environment, right? So the question is, how do you come up with a believable storytelling? I find it difficult to imagine myself in a scene that is still in development, and I worry that the immersion of the scene will suffer for it. How are you able to come up with believable storytelling for your scene? So I added like a couple of things here. A couple of things where I usually start, right? It basically comes down to doing research, right? A lot of research. Usually when I'm working on a project, I'll just have something related to the topic on my second screen or somewhere in the back so that I can be immersed in it and kind of pick up some like nuggets of like information here and there, right? So it all starts from there. What I usually focus on is I try to, especially when we're talking about medieval stuff, is specific time zones, right? So early medieval is going to be completely different than like late medieval, right? And that has like a big impact on like the materials that they use, how they go about building things, like all that kind of stuff, right? For example, with my scene, I picked early medieval because I was like, I don't want to do the stereotypical like glass windows and a lot of metal. I want to showcase a medieval society that is trying to get around without the use of a lot of metal, which gives you like a completely different look into medieval society when everything is kind of built out of wood and stone and all that kind of stuff, right? Comparative to like a high fantasy thing where like metal and glass is like widely available, right? What I also focus on is the life of daily people and also the jobs that they do because you can get a lot of information about people's jobs, right? From like the interior of like peasant houses to like what like a manor lord looks like, right? Like um what does their situation look like, right? Like how do they live? How do they go about their day? All that kind of stuff can influence how you think about this. Because this then leads to like better role play, right? And what I mean with role play is I want to I want to put myself in the scene and then see how I go about my day, right? So my day is going to look different if I am again like a peasant or like maybe a stable hand, or no, like taking care of the stables compared to the Lord of the Manor who's going to be taking care of their job, right? Where does that difference come in? And how can you showcase these individual moments in a different way compared to those two people, right? As an example. Like I said, I watched a lot of documentaries. This is, for example, it's super tiny, but this is the intro to The Fires of Gideon, which is a documentary series about a castle that they're building in France using traditional techniques. I learned a lot of that because they're basically showcasing like all the work that goes into building a castle, and they go from like, this is the masonry hut where people are like chopping down blocks, and they wanna create like, I don't know, like a stone arch or something like that. This is where that's created. To like a carpenter station, or like a Fletcher, or someone who makes ropes, and like how does that all work, right? And you get like really, really, really cool visuals. Let me see if I still have the link open. Don't think I do. Oh, here we go. Let me just quickly. Here it is. It's such a cool series. It's really cool to look into. Where are we? I respect the people that play D&D. Being able to freely roleplay and immerse yourself in a scene is something that I haven't done in a long time. Yeah, I mean, to me, that is what makes like a powerful scene, right? Like you can imagine yourself like being and living in that time period, right? And that's going to give you insights and imaginative powers that you otherwise wouldn't have, right? Like being able to immerse yourself in it. It's really cool, and I use that a lot. I tend to do it more from like a logical perspective, right? So let's say I'm a stable hand. Where do I live? How do I walk to work? Like, how do I get to work? What do I do on my day? How long does my day take? When do I go back? Do I sleep in the stable? Do I sleep in a house next to the stable? Do I sleep outside of the castle? Like all those kind of things. They're like, they're really cool to look into. Plus, you got some flexibility, right? Doesn't all need to be like super accurate. Cool, because that leads to more believable environments. Some other sources of games, like some other sources of inspiration, are games, right? Take them with a grain of salt, right? Because there's someone else's interpretation. So always be aware of like what they do and why they do it. And then paintings. I love to, for example, for my medieval stuff, I love to look at paintings. There was a beautiful painting in like the Polish History Museum where I went to in Wrocław. They had this beautiful painting on the wall, and I remember it visually, but I couldn't take a picture because pictures weren't allowed. But I remember it visually, like the colors and like the way that it looked, and it was like a little sawmill in the middle of the forest. No one around, just like a person just doing like little sawmilling stuff. It was beautiful. I can remember it. Yeah, and then that then leads me to like some couple of questions here, right? What is the function of this house? What is the function of this house? And how do we visualize that functionality with assets or with visuals or with textures, right? So yeah. Because right now they're just like two houses, but what if we give them like more individual character, right? So let's let's keep on going with the idea, right? So let's say this is the stable hand house, right? It probably wouldn't be that way because they wouldn't live in the castle, but let's go with the idea. And then this is like the Lord of the Manor, right? Cool. How do we differentiate them? How do we differentiate the two, right? The Lord of the Manor is going to have less clutter in front of it, right? And the stable house is probably going to have like a bunch of tools that are related to just like, I don't know, like hoofsmithing and like a bunch of tools and like all that kind of stuff, right? That's an easy way to differentiate the two. And with that storytelling in mind, I'm trying to like merge that into the scene. So yeah, that's the way that I do it in like a very short and quick fashion. Yeah, hopefully that is helpful, Leah. Barry's asking, how long have you been working on your medieval scene, Tim? Oh my god. I started it in 2021. So I've been working on it for 4 years. But here's the thing. I haven't worked on it for like a year now, I think. It is just something that I like jump into like every couple of months. That is just pretty fun to play around with and try some new techniques, and then I'll just leave it hanging again. I will, yeah, at a certain point, like once the course is done and like maybe I'm looking for like a creative project, or then I feel like it, I'll probably jump into it and kind of try to get it like somewhat done, or maybe stream it again or something like that. But it's been a while. Right. Next one. Wait. No overpaints. Dang it, I didn't prepare well enough. Let's see. I think this was more. Yeah, this was not really anything to do with like the updates here, right? Not necessarily anything with the visuals. You were just asking questions like how stuff gets created. So, when working on large scale assets, say anything over 4 by 4 meters, how do you maintain consistent textile density when altering RGB masking substance painter for material blending? Blah 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 blah. Are there specific workflows or shader techniques used in production to preserve or reconstruct the blend quality? Yeah, so I think you mentioned you use the method of you use your RGB mask with a tileable variation mask, like a noise mask, to add breakup to the mask in a way to retrieve back textile density, but I'm curious if there are any other ways. No, I think this is the main way of doing it, right? Like basically your RGB mask can be like really, really low resolution. And then you can re-add that resolution back in by blending it with another mask, right? So that's the way that you're currently doing it now, which actually is probably like the most effective way of getting it, because you don't really want to add like a bunch of resolution to your RGB mask and then add like another mask on top of it, because then we're wasting resources, right? So honestly, the way that you're doing it now seems like it's working like really well. And then you're also asking, with Nanite now supporting mesh painting, would it be a better approach to directly paint inside of Unreal and translate the data into an RGB mask within the shader instead of relying on like high resolution painter exports? So this is sort of what I was talking about before, right? In my medieval scene, I found that like creating an RGB mask for like a bunch of assets, in your case, you don't have like 700 assets like I did, right? But when you're dealing with the volume, this workflow really slows you down. So what I started doing, instead of like making an RGB mask, I would store that data into the vertex color instead, and you can actually bake vertex color data using the modeling tools inside of Unreal, which made it go from like, I take things from Blender to Painter to then Unreal, to I take things from Blender to Unreal, I click one button and it's done. Like that was the real flexibility that I got, and then I can just paint in the engine if I wanted to. However, the downside to that is that that's why it probably applies better for Nanite, is that you're reliant more on like the way that you load your assets, right? So for example, if you have like really strong loading and you see lot popping, that is going to have an effect on the vertex color because you store data in it. And if you then try to reduce the vertices, then that's going to be that effect, right? It's going to affect the visuals of it. But yeah, you can honestly paint directly onto like a mesh. But I usually, the way that I do things is I try to go as procedural as I can and then build a stack on top of it, right? So for example, the shader that I was using was I just bake it into the modeling tools. I get a vertex color data pass from that. And then I can still, on top of it, I can then control it by like going in with vertex paint, right? So that's the way that I can like handcraft stuff into it. V is saying exactly, but you are dependent on the mesh density for it. Yeah, but honestly, with like Nanite, I don't see that being an issue because you got so much density to play around with anyway. I would be curious if you can even tell if it shifts away. Slate is saying, isn't in-engine painting limited because you don't get to use custom brushes, or can you? So you don't even need custom brushes, honestly, because you get your blending from the mask that you add into your material, right? But Artem is saying now you could. Oh, okay, so apparently there is an option for that. But honestly, I I don't really see the need for that unless you're doing specific things, because you rely on your, in this case, you rely on your RGB mask that is blended with like another mask on top of it, right? That's where you get like your texture, and then you just paint the influence of it rather than being very specific with how you want to paint, right? With mesh paints, you can include stencils as well. Yeah. Again, maybe that's like more interesting for like denser meshes like nanite, right? But yeah, that's something interesting to look into. There's also a good pipeline with baking AO and other stuff inside of Unreal. Yeah, that's the one that I'm talking about, I think. Because I use this workflow, but I don't see how it can replace RGB masks. However, I could be wrong. Feels like it's an addition. Oh no, if you're doing, so if you're doing the technique where you like use vertex color and then you use like your RGB mask on top of it, then you're wasting resources, right? Because you're storing the same data just in different places. If that's what you mean. PSA and SSAO? Yeah, but that's not baked, right? So there is a technique in The Ascent, like the game that was made by Tor Frick and like a bunch of other talented people in Unreal Engine 4, where they actually used baked AO or like engine AO or something like that, or pre-baked AO, can't remember. And they basically generated like all their masks for like all their services like that. So it's basically doing the same thing that I just explained. They just use like a different technique of getting the data, right? Because back then, I think the modeling tools were not available yet. Or they didn't have the baking in them. So it's just different ways of getting the same thing. But that was a really interesting talk, like creating the world of the Ascent or something like that. They talked about it. It's really interesting. That GGC talk is great. Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. That talk was really good. I really enjoyed that. Also because like I've been following Tor Frick for a long time, right? And he's so good at just like squeezing the maximum amount of stuff out of like minimum amount of resources. He's done great stuff with it. All right. So I don't really have anything to add on here, but yeah, I hope that was helpful. Let's go. Who is next? We're gonna be flying through this a bit more speed. Topg. So let's switch it over. I don't think I have too much to say because honestly, we're getting to a point where it's more like it's your choice rather than my opinion. But we'll have a look. So, update on the cinematic and the color grading. First question. So I haven't had time to render with color grading in the latest render shots. Let me know if this conveys the passage of time. Okay, so this is about the videos, right? So let me get Discord on the screen. It's a bit cut off, but you get the point. So I did take a look at this before, and I think it's okay. The only thing that I don't like is the transition. It feels too glitchy, cyberpunky for what it is, right? I would honestly be fine with just like a clear like transition, or I don't know, maybe a fade or something like that. Because it just feels like a bit too much for what it needs to be, right? However, I mean, I do like this. You know, I do like that we have a transition in the cinematic and that we get to see it. That is cool. I do like that aspect of it for sure. I think. Oh, I kind of see what you're doing. Okay, so you're like You're like already trying to say that there's going to be a transition coming. At first I had a sudden transition. So what I think is that what is the purpose of the transition, right? Like, what are you trying to say? The transition is great, but make it look like less 2D, like Battlefield transitions. I don't know. Am I overthinking this? It feels like a transition is completely detached from like the environment, where I kind of want to see something that is like more in line and more cohesive with the storytelling of the scene, right? Like, it feels now, I don't know, this glitchy kind of effect. Maybe it's personal taste. It's just not really doing it for me. So maybe we're getting into personal taste. But yeah. Because I do see what you're trying to set up, and I do like it. Right? But maybe the effect itself can be switched. Yeah, because so piggybacking up what Leia's saying as well. She's saying a simple cut will do the trick, maybe even with a different angle showcase, let the scene speak for itself. That's the thing, right? Like, I feel like we're getting into like, okay, if we're gonna do storytelling, I want to see more storytelling, right? Whereas this is just like, hey, look, I want to showcase that there is like a transition in the scene, and that can be like relatively simple. Like, this is a principle. This is a time where like the KISS principle can come in handy, you know? Like, keep it simple. Because yeah, the transition between the scenes is good. It's just the transition effect itself. Yeah, feel free to play around with it. I mean, look, I think to a certain degree, I think it's also like what you want to do with it as well, right? For me, I try to root everything in consistency and context, right? So everything that I'm trying to do kind of needs to be grounded in, let's say not glitchy, right? Because we're not trying to like hype people or like get them really interested, or it's going to be like a futuristic game. It's more just like, yeah, just like a simple transition where we're like showing the decay over time, right? And like a simple fade or something like that could be interesting. RC Adventures of Laz is saying, I could even imagine the transition where you see a piece of the environment like a tile falling off, triggering a simple cut, like reaching impact. That's actually a pretty cool idea, you know? Like, let something in the environment trigger it. That's pretty cool. I do like that. But let's see. Let's have a look at some of the other stuff here. So your second question was, how does the color grading feel? It's in order of on and off. So I think if I organize them correctly, the top ones are off, and then the bottom ones are on. It's honestly, it's fine tuning, right? It's fine tuning, but it's kind of hard to tell. And probably even harder to tell over stream, right? There are going to be differences for sure. The above one is graded and the other one is off. Yeah. I mean, it is nice. I like the little touches. I like that we get like a little bit more color complexion. It's a little bit more contrasty. I do like it. But yeah. That's what I was saying. I don't really have too much to add to it. I do like what you're doing. But it's again like this final color grading stuff. It's like there's nothing technically wrong with it, but you're just like fine tuning it to what you want to showcase, right? There's nothing blatantly where I can be like, "Ooh, no, don't be doing that." Also because I keep like color grading so simple with my stuff too. Yeah, fair, that makes sense. But it does look really nice though. I do really like the scene, Top G. It's looking really nice. Cool. So nothing too much to add from me, perspective, but yeah, great stuff. Yeah, you're trying to wrap up today. I think that makes sense. Like, I would definitely spend spend a little bit more time on just like getting the transition to feel, getting maybe the transition to feel like different, or I don't know, slightly tweaking it. But other than that, I don't really have too much to say on this one. I think it's time to put a bow on it, send it off into the ArtStation atmosphere, and then see what we're gonna do for the next one, right? And congratulations on finishing it. Really good scene. It looks insane, says Fair. Yeah, it does. Fair, you also had a question. Is it okay if next week I participate even without a block out? I love to get some help planning a scene before starting. Yeah, sure. I could definitely help with that. It's probably not going to be like all comprehensive, right? But we can definitely talk about like some strategies there. Sure. Battlefield games. So yeah, talking about this. Oh, that's about the transition again. Yeah. Thank you. No worries. Oh, sorry, Leia. Just do 4 different versions where each of them uses a different approach, then share them in a comparison format where other people to see, give feedback, and choose the one you like. Yeah, I think that's also a good shout, you know? That's also the way that I approach like getting feedback from like let's say art directors or other people. Especially when it comes to personal work, right? I make 3 variations. I call them A, B, and C, and then let people vote, you know? And see what they like. So yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. And then Babu is going next. Oh, again, I didn't have time to do any notes for this one. Okay. Did I make notes for all the other ones? I think so. Okay. Last one without notes then. My goal with this is to make some really nice looking rocks. Okay. What is missing on these blockouts are for sure spider webs, but I will put them after I'm happy with the layout. That's fine. That's detail anyway. With the mood, I want to give the feeling that I had when I was a kid. I would go into a basement and I would see those spiders infected with fungi. So I made it look like them spider ghosts. Ooh, that's creepy though. For Whip Wednesday, with this, I would like to ask what you think about the current layout. It looks good. I mean, I would definitely say. So you kind of have what it looks like, just like a cave going in, turning to the left, and then we see something, right? Like a shrine. So that is basically going to be... That's the first thing that I would say. Like, decide on what the hero shot is going to be, right? And focus all of your attention on that. And then you can have, like, all the other ones as, like, an additional shot, right? So I would say, like, okay, this is going to be the final shot. We're going to focus our attention here. And that's going to be the money shot. Right? So, and that allows us to focus on one thing, because the rest of it, we're going to reuse anyway. So that's fine. Leia saying, love the opening for the cave with some nice lighting to fill in the scene. Makes your lighting work easier down the line. Yeah, it does. The thing that I'm thinking here is we kind of want to make it feel like it's really underground. And what I would do here is I would honestly have just like more rocks covering the entrance, and that is almost like a chute that you're coming down, right? And then you have like a light coming into that chute, like kind of giving you still like a bit of that like contrast that you have, right? But making it feel more underground is gonna help with that. gonna make it feel like more dangerous, right? That's gonna be cool. But yeah, I mean the current layout is straightforward, but it does the job, right? I would definitely try to focus like more attention on like whatever this is, right? And then try to frame this in a way where I don't know. Like you're already doing like a little bit of it, right? But I want to see like more depth, or maybe this is like carved out in some way. So that we almost get it from like, if this is top down, then I'm almost imagining that like you have like your rock shrine here, and that's something got carved around it, and that's why we're looking into it, right? Because then we can relate this to the spiders, right? Like somehow, like a spider shrine or something. Hello, McVal. Good to see ya. Good to see ya. Yeah, this is definitely going to be the money shot, right? So that's going to be worth spending your time on. The rest of it is okay because it's like it's a transition space, right? And I feel like you've done a good job at like creating some verticality, making it really interesting, like all that kind of stuff is going good. So I don't really have anything to say about the other shots. It's mostly like this shot where you kind of want to double down and make it look like extra sick. So maybe thinking about um some potential like additional verticality, right? Like how are the spider webs gonna come into the space? Because maybe what we want to do is, if this is like the den, right? I was thinking later on the spiderweb could hold speed to the shrine, but like you said, that's for the detailing part. Well, so for that, I would already put those in because now we're putting it on the focal point, right? So in anything to do with the focal point, I kind of want to figure that out as soon as possible so that we don't have to think about that later, right? So because I'm imagining like you could almost have like, you know, like these holes where like they have like a bunch of spider webs like coming out of them, and they're kind of just like all over the ceiling and stuff. And then you have like a smaller hole here that kind of is the same thing, and maybe like smaller one in the back. That's what could make it look really sick, right? And then we could kind of, then we have an excuse to then use the spider webs from here. And then let's say there's like a spider web that goes here, and that captured like a little bit of the rock. They kind of fell down, right? Because this rock is probably going to remain intact, but then anything that falls down is probably going to be captured by like spider webs, right? And then again, we can kind of use that, like all the spider webs and the stuff that's coming in here. We can use that as a framing device, right? So you can kind of see that I'm kind of building around it. We can potentially use, I don't know, a spider web going behind it or something. But yeah. Yeah, that stuff could look really cool. I know that you're still doing the spider webs, right? But like using them as like a framing device would be very interesting here. And honestly, this could just be planes, right? Like just simple grayscale planes. Slap them in there, you're done. I just want to really lean into the spiders being there, right? I think the most important aspect are the holes. And then the spider webs you were thinking about doing anyway. So I think it's good. Right, second question. Are the rock shapes and numbers of them good? I would like them. I would like to make them, beside the right column, to be good to use in another scene as well. I wonder what is a good set of rocks to have. A good set of rocks to have is the one that you need for the current project. Right? Like, if you want to make a set for like every scene ever, you are gonna find it pretty difficult. You can kind of make something like this, but it's never gonna be optimal for like the next scene, right? Like, if you know what I mean. So I think what is a better way of potentially approaching this for the future is you make the stuff that you need for this scene, but you keep the high polys and the low polys, and then you just rebake them in like, I don't know, a different way if you need to, and like pack them in a different way, right? Because let's say, I mean, I don't know how you are approaching it, right? But let's say for these guys, the best way is do them individually, right? But let's say you want to be smart and let's say, ooh, I'm going to pack these into like one texture, right? Then that means that whenever we only need the one in this next scene, then we're going to be pulling all four in, right? I'm looking at this from like a production perspective, but so yeah, if you want to reuse them for next scene, make them individual, because that's going to give you the most flexibility. And then save low poly and high poly, because what is also gonna play a role is that for the next project you're going to be doing, the style of these rocks might not be good, or the quality of these rocks might not be good, so you kind of want to go back, right, and like improve on them too. So that's why we need to save the source files. It's going to be good. I will probably make them with a material layering system with RGB masks. I mean, that's cool. Cool. Yeah, I mean, that could definitely work, right? Like, I don't think you need a material layering system in the way that I'm thinking about it. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's just a workflow, right? So if that works for you, then it's good. In terms of if you want to make a kit, right? If you go back to that a little bit, you want to account for all the shapes and sizes, right? And if we're trying to remain consistent with our textile density, right, to a certain degree, unless you're going to build flexibility into your material setup, then what I would do is try to assume that like whatever rock you're using, you're going to stay within a scale range of, let's say, 0.6 to 1.3. Which means that you can only scale down to 0.6 or scale up to 1.3. The reason why those numbers is because, I mean, there's no set rule for this, right? But this is what I'm personally comfortable with. And this avoids you from like scaling things up like too low or too high, where you break textile density within the scene. These are some like rough estimates that I've gotten from like years of experience. Sometimes I go below or above, but it's, yeah. These are like the numbers that I've found that kind of work really well. So this means that, let's say 60%, that is like the maximum that I'm going to be scaling this one down. And I can only scale this one to like 1.3. That means that in between these two, we're kind of missing something that's like in between, right? Like roughly. So what is missing, I would honestly, well, here's where we go into trouble, right? Because this is a boulder, which is nice and round, and then these ones are more sharp, right? So this is nice in terms of shape language. So I would probably scale this one up so that we push them closer into the big range, right? And then in terms of the small range, that's the stuff that we have here. I think we're good as well. What we are only missing is like a medium range. So like making 3 additional ones for the medium range, that would probably be good. That's the way that I would go about it. Do you ever scale something in a single axis, or is that a no? Not really. Because then stretching becomes like really apparent, right? There are cases where you can, but then the material needs to be set up for that, right? So let's say you have a trim that's mapped on a trim sheet and you have like a texture that is projected onto it, then you can like scale it to your heart's desire, right? But otherwise, you don't really want to fuck around with it too much. Sometimes the most effective one is a z-axis. For example, if you have like a pile of bricks or something like that, you could potentially scale it down to make it like less height without distorting the textures like or like the assets too much. Honestly, you could potentially get away with that. But like, that's usually what I stick with, like the z-axis. Cool. Thank you for sharing your work, Babsu. Babsu. Babu. Thank you. There was another question here as well. Is it good to learn about... Oh, it is good to learn about the material layering system for sure. Yeah. Sus. Yeah, it becomes quite stretchy. It does. Right. Keep it going. Slate is next. Let's go to Slate. Slate was asking for feedback on the top section here of the roof. I like that you're adding stuff on the roof, which is good, right? Because it adds to the silhouette, and I like the way that you're going about it. It did seem a little bit random, though. It was just like these random boxes with cables connecting everything to each other. It just really felt like that's not really what you would necessarily see. I think, honestly, you can keep this box, you know, or even, I don't know, run some cables down here. Connect this box to that box, right? And have like a cable tray or something like that, right? What are they called? Running up. And then you could have like the occasional one that is just like connected, right? Because it adds a nice silhouette. And then honestly, for the rest of it, what I would do is like maybe change these into like aircon units. And then have like a duct like connected to it, right? Because I got some inspiration from like some of this stuff, right? Where you can kind of see like we have like a big boxy stuff. We have some satellite dishes. We've got some like AC units, or like a more clean version, even, you know. But I do like, in general, what I do like again is that contrast in the shapes, right? Where we have the bigger shapes, and then we have like the small detailed shapes, and like some shapes in between, right? So I'm thinking about like an excuse of maybe I don't know, making this like a big blocky shape, and then you have like a tiny shape next to it that then, I don't know, connects to the building again in some way, and then we can have like a cable that's kind of like connecting the two. And from a visual perspective, like this stuff is so fun to play around with. Because you're just thinking in shapes, right? Big, medium, small. And then this could be like an AC unit as well. And then that stuff can stay. Yeah. I'm still thinking of adding a rack for them. Yeah. I think that could be cool. It's just when it comes to this this like infrastructure, these infrastructural elements, I love the way that they're designed because they are kind of built with like this really nice shape language, right? With like big, medium, small stuff. So I try to replicate that as best that I can. So that you get like some thin wires, some like piping, and then some like duct work, right? That's like an easy way to think about it. But yeah, you can definitely have a lot of fun with this though. Yeah, because you got some stuff already here, right? The stuff from this angle is working like really nicely. I didn't know whether to add all the detail because you won't be exposed from it from the camera's view. Well, so that's a good point, actually. That's a very good point. If you are never gonna show off this angle, then all the stuff that I just said, you can kind of like leave it apart from like the big or medium shapes, right? Um, but yeah, that's totally fine. Like if you just want to keep it to like the cable works and all that kind of stuff, that's fine too. Because it is a lot of work, and if you're not gonna see it, yeah, leave it. But yeah, I just assumed that like from this angle that we were gonna see it up here, and then it would need like more work. But yeah, if we're not seeing it, we're not making it. Or do I make a separate shot emphasizing the rooftop details? Only if you're gonna make them. Like I would think about it like if let's say you love making those things, right? Like I'm a sucker for those things as well, so I kind of want to put that detail in. So I would make the things first and then like build like a scene around it. I wouldn't bloat your scene by like building a shot first and then having to do all the work, right? We're doing it the opposite way. Because also with something like this, if you got like the functional elements here already, and you just want to add like some cables and some smaller stuff on top of it too, we can still do that in the end, right? That's totally fine. Right. But that was it, I think, from your side as well, Slate. So let's have a look. Yeah. Yeah, good stuff though. I like that you're thinking about this because it adds so much character to a building. So that's awesome. Great stuff, man. Great stuff. Right. Next one. We have who do we have? Alexander? Alexander? You're not in the list? Are you in the list? No, you're not. What happened here? Oh, I think Alexander might just be saying hi. I just realized. Okay, it's free for all then. Let's have a look. So question here from Tobias. Tobias is actually asking about the team challenges. So Tobias is making a gibbet or a pole with a cage for the team challenge. I thought it was a bit different to the standard one and a bit less primitive. I've done the low poly and unwrapped it, and I tend to sculpt the high poly bake it. Okay, cool. Specific questions. Cages are inherently quite a consistent shape with repetitive details, and whilst I do plan to add a little bit of wobble, I wonder how far can I push it? Well, honestly, you can push it how far as you want, right? That depends on what you want to go for the scene. For example, this is one like a cage from like Uncharted. That thing is almost like unrecognizable as like a full cage, but it is such an awesome visual, no? So you can kind of break the whole thing apart if that is what you need for the scene, right? But I would at least add like a couple of rungs, like circles or like areas that have been like maybe affected by like a bolt that got loose or like a rusted bolt or something like that, so that you can believably add some like, I don't know, a rung that's like offset or something. However, the benefit of this is I would honestly keep it straight in the beginning, and then in the low poly you can like go and like shift it up and like skew it a little bit, and you have a lot of flexibility with that. But yeah, feel free to exaggerate. Like that's why I added this like image here, even though I'd never played like Uncharted. I was like, oh, I think I know something from there. So yeah, and it looks sick. And then the second question is whether you needed to do this with, well, you're choosing between sculpted detail or a tileable wood texture because of the length. Any thoughts and tips on how to approach this? So if it's 6 meters, you're gonna have to split it up somehow, right? And then you're gonna have to somehow cover up the seam if the seam is gonna be visible. The benefit of that is that you can just like get like, I don't know, a couple of rope sections, right? And then you just sneakily hide the seam in there. And then you can break up like section 1 from section 2, right? If that's what you wanted. Or you could even like, I don't know, sneakily like symmetry it or something. But in general, what I would say is the way that you're going to go about it in terms of workflow just depends on where it is going to be in the scene, and also how important it is going to be to the scene itself, right? Because this is basically like a little cheat sheet where 1, how important is it to the scene? 2, what is the distance to the camera? And 3, can you reuse it or do you plan to reuse it? Those 3 questions in general give you like a good sense of like what workflow you need to be using based on the importance of it in the scene, right? Because I've got no clue what the scene looks like. I try to stay away from like team challenge spoilers as much as I can. But if it's in the distance, let's slap a couple of title balls on it and that looks good enough, right? Maybe, I don't know, maybe do some vertex paint blending or something like that to get like some nice rust, but that's all you need really. If it's gonna be dominant in the scene, then yeah, it might be worth spending some more time on it. And especially if you can reuse it, then making it look good and kind of somewhat modular could be to your benefit. McFellow's asking, is this for the team challenge? Yes, it is. Bias is crafting this little prison for a skeleton for the team challenge. So yeah, hope that was helpful, Tobias. Oh, nice. I should post some stuff for next week. Yes, let's do it. Right. So yeah, ideally what I would say for people that want to post for the team challenge, feel free to include like a picture of the bigger picture as well, right? So that I can get some context. But yeah. Cool. Moving on to Burak. Let's have a look at Burak's work. Burak is working assets. Oh, Burak is saying it goes too late because of wintertime, so I won't be able to make it to the stream. That's all good. That's all good, Burak. You were asking a question of how to showcase your props better. Wireframe, scene building for props, etc. In general, you're kind of asking 2 questions, right? So let's break it down from like a visual aspect first and then talk about the breakdowns. So first, from like a visual aspect, I've given you like a couple of examples here. I think that any prop can benefit from having context. Context to me is what tells a story rather than showcasing a prop in just by itself, right? You can kind of see that here, where even just adding like a little bit of wood underneath it, you can get like a feeling of like, oh, this is like an old workshop that like has like this tool in it, right? Same for this one. Like trying to go to like a gun auction or something like that, right? Like it's very believable that this is like could be like a 3D model from like a gun auction, something like that. You could also go with something like this, right? Where like it's a studio setup. However, the reason why I try to steer away from studio setups as like a recommendation is because you are setting the bar so high for yourself, because a studio setup by design is clean, which means that all the focus falls on your asset, right? The stuff that you made needs to be pristine because that's the only thing that they can look at, right? Whereas with like a storytelling aspect, you get some like distracting elements and there's less focus on the prop by design, right? The reason why I say that is because that raises the bar for texturing, right? Because if your textures are not like hyper detailed, then that is going to be seen as a negative in this sort of like setting, because that is literally what the focus is going to be on, right? So if I was to make a prop, I would choose not to do this because I hate focusing on single prop. I would rather go with this approach. rather than with this one here. Is it seen as a negative if you only render a prop in, say, Marmoset inside of a game engine? No, I don't think so, because Marmoset is still like a real-time engine, right? Sure, there's some benefits, like the ray tracing looks really good out of the box, and like if you want to render like translucent stuff, it looks really, really good. So there is gonna be some differences there, but I don't think it's that big of a difference, right? As long as you have it as an additional thing, right? Where you can, for example, you say like, hey, look, I have my scene, right? Like the scene rendered in context is going to be in Unreal, and then doing Marmoset on the side, that can be good. You can also take like a portfolio-wide approach, right? If I look at your portfolio and you have, let's say, I don't know, let's say three projects, and then one of them is rendered in Unreal, right? And it looks really good, and then two other ones are in Marmoset. I don't need to see like more proof that you can also render something in Unreal, right? So it's per project basis that you can look at it, or also portfolio basis. And then to go back to Burak's work, showcasing a prop. This is more a trim sheet, but I wanted to give some like context on how to showcase it, right? This is, for example, on how to showcase the use of trim sheets and how they work. And this is from like Insurgency Sandstorm as an example. And the second question, before we get to your question, David, in the chat, the second question from Burak was basically a breakdown, right? Like, what do you want to see on a breakdown? What I want to see is poly count, UVs, textures, wireframes. That's it. That's what I want to see for a prop, right? Let me quickly think if I'm missing something. I don't think so. Poly count, UVs, wireframes, and textures. That's what I want to see for a prop. You can have like your hero presentation here, right? Which is like, wow, this looks so beautiful. And then you can have a breakdown underneath it to showcase like the technical aspects, right? That you know how to make the most out of the resources if they're given to you. Cool. But thank you, Burak. And oh, last thing here. When you're doing a scene like this, make it into like a small diorama, right? Like see if you can use things within your scene to kind of make like a smaller scene outside of it, right? If I have to think back to what you were building, for example, you have like a little altar that's next to the statue. Add all these things like on the altar and show it there. That's going to be way more interesting because you have the context of the whole thing, right? It's going to look cool. So, yeah. Good stuff. Keep it up. Let's jump to questions in the chat. So David is saying, should I be afraid of forgetting things like moving nodes in Unreal Engine if I work in a professional studio? I mean, we can all forget one thing or another, right? What do you mean with like moving nodes? As in like not cleaning up like your material graph or something? Is that what you mean? Because I mean, ideally you should always be conscious about like who you're going to be handing off to, right? So especially if you're doing like materials and you know that other material artists or artists are going to be looking at it, it is good to, at the end, when everything is functional and you've kind of finished it, to do a cleanup pass and just say like, hey, look, I'm just going to add like a couple of comments. I'm going to make everything look nice. I'm going to clean up the graph. But if you forget like one or two things, that's fine, right? It is game development. It's going to be hectic. There's going to be a lot of iteration. But like the more that you take your time to really clean those things up, it's going to be really beneficial down the line. Because the way that I look at it is you are helping the team, not only in like better understanding the work that you do, but also in setting the bar for what should be done when you're handing over to someone, right? So for example, if we're going to be working together and you hand me like your material work and the entire graph is commented and it's like explained and all that kind of stuff, and it's real pleasure to work with, I'm then going to take that on board, and then I'm going to be looking at it and I'm going to be like, oh my god, if I make a material, okay, I'm going to be doing the same thing too, right? Is you're setting an example for the rest of the team too, which is going to be massive. Yeah. Sometimes I think I'm going to forget how to make shaders or something like that. That's fine. Like if you're jumping in between like a bunch of random things, you're going to forget stuff, right? Or you're gonna see new things and you're gonna think to yourself like, oh my god, I was so dumb. Why did I do that? That's normal. Slate is saying, I believe you should make it look very nice in the case you forget it later. You will understand what it does later down the line. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good example. But then well, we're peeling the layers of the onion, right? Because then you get to the second layer and then you have to also explain it in a way that your future self can understand the way that you're thinking now. Right? So even if you have like a nice comment that says, I don't know, what would be a good example? I can't really think of an example, but you can imagine a situation, right, where I comment something in like something that I'm really involved in, and let's say, okay, blends the first spline layer with the second spline layer based on angle, and then it's like, okay, that sounds good to me now, but what if I try to get back into it like down the line? Which spline layers from what? You know, like, huh? So yeah, you have to contend with your future self as well. McFell saying, I need to get better at commenting and cleaning up my graphs. I keep forgetting what things do and where everything is in the graph. I'll give you a good trick for this. If you want to get some accountability there, either share it with friends, right? Because then you have to comment or clean it up, or even like give it as a free resource for someone out there, and then you're gonna have to clean it up. So you can kind of keep yourself accountable by like building some stuff around it, right? Where let's say, oh, you build a master material and you're gonna share it with your friends, you're gonna feel guilty for not cleaning it up. Right, last one for today. It's Dinant. Oh, welcome, Dinant. Good to see your work. Dinant is building a scriptorium and is asking how the layout is so far. I tried to create an open space that feels spacious, but I feel like the pillar in the shot on the first image might not work for that completely. Now we're talking about this pillar here, this shot here. So here's the thing: if you wanna create like an open space, then I'm expecting first of all the ceiling to be like more open, right? Because the proportions of the ceiling, they kind of like are very restrictive right now. So I'm expecting that curve to be way more like this, for example. Like it's way more subtle, you know, way more at ease. I will sign your leave. Have a great week. Thanks for being here, Slate. Thank you so much for your support. It's awesome to have you here, as always. That bottom left screenshot looks familiar. Does it? It's from a movie. I don't know which one. I have no clue. I just took like the first random image that came up. But yeah, that's what I would do. Like increase the curve height, because this flat curves like crushes the ceiling, and it adds to that like to the feeling of like smallness, right? I forgot like how to pronounce it or like to say it better, but like it makes you feel small, right? Because it's crushing you. Well, my English today was not attending. Oh, mine is always on leave. Like it's fine. Preaching to the choir here, buddy. So yeah, some other side notes. So we talked about the curves, right? Like opening those curves already can help. If we want to, this is kind of painful. If you really want to make it feel like an open space, I think you might be right about not having the pillar in the middle, but having the pillar on the sides. And then what we create is something like this, right? Then we have like the pillars on the side, the space in the middle is open, and then you just have like the pillars on the sides, creating like this really beautiful, like open space, right? If that is the goal. However, I think we can definitely make it work with just doing like a couple of adjustments here. Right? Like if we imagine this is a curve and then maybe a second curve there. And then if we angle the camera in a way where the pillar is not in the middle, but like a little bit more offset, and we have like a more of an angled view of the whole thing. Like I'm almost imagining like a camera looking from here or something, right? That we see more of the open space. That could be helpful. Name of the rose. Oh yeah, that's it. I saw that in like the... Oh, where is it? Oh no, it's just an image in here. I saw that when I dragged it in. I was like, no clue. No clue what that movie is about, but... Second question from Dinant is, how is the lighting so far? I find lighting one of the hardest things to add to the scene. I have the lighting set up with an HDRI outside, which is good, as well as a directional light, boosted with a directional light by each window. Okay. Let's take a step back there. So the HDRI outside is good, right? Directional light is good. You only need one in your scene because directional light is basically going to be your sunlight, right? So I don't know if we're like we misspoke or we're using the wrong things, but you don't want to have a directional light inside of each window. And then you say you always have some smaller spot sight further in to give it a bit more of a light feel. I'm not seeing any directional lights, so I'm assuming that you were talking about these guys over here, which is good because that's kind of what you want to see. However, I don't think you need these guys. If you angle your sun right, and if you're still having like darker angles, I would not add it with fake lights necessarily because they're always kind of going to look fake. What I would do instead is boost your global illumination. I think there's a specific value in your light settings where you can actually boost like how much scattering happens within your scene. I just don't know the exact name of it, but you can definitely change it. I think it's a slider that goes from like 1 to 4, if I remember correctly. But that could be a good way to get more bounce light into your scene. Because, yeah, I've noticed the same thing as well, where lumens sometimes might make a scene feel like pretty dark. But there is something to be said about like that really nice contrast, right? Where it goes from like light to dark. Also, what could be potentially interesting is maybe having like another, depending on where the camera is going to be placed, right? Have like another opening with like light coming in from this angle as well. Because that's usually when I feel like, this is too dark, placing a fake light is usually my last option, because then I want to find a way to like also have a physical presence, right? So for example, what I would do in this case, if I feel like I need more light on the left, I would be like, either I open a door. If I don't want to open a door, maybe we can add some like wall torches or something like that, right? And then we have like a light coming in here. We can have like a light coming in here. And that creates a combination of like physical light. Like the physical plus a fill light, right? That's what we're looking for. Because a fill light by itself, unless you do it in like a very careful way, is very, very fickle. Like I don't really like to use them unless I have to. And like January is saying as well, Lumen is really sensitive to your albedo values. And if you have any trouble with your scene being too dark, check your albedo values and make it brighter. Yep, that's a very good point, January. Thank you for posting that. That's exactly right. And you're dealing with like a lot of darker subjects here, right? So if you're struggling with that, that would be something to check too. Cool. Right. Thank you, Dinant. Thank you for posting your work. Gonna be switching it up. Yeah, that's it for the week then. Thank you so much all for posting your work. I'm not gonna make it too long because I do have some editing and all that kind of stuff that I want to get back to. So thanks everyone for being here. For everyone that participated, I'll post the updates in your individual little thread that you have going on. And if you want to get feedback yourself and you're new here, like there's a link in the description down below. You can follow to become a member of our lovely community. But yeah, that will be it for this week. I will see you all next week, or in our lovely workshop that we have in 4 days. See you all there, and have a nice evening. Bye bye.